To go live. It's time for the pre-show. Hello, everyone in the pre-show. We are live on the 221,002 Core 2A Plus study group. I've got, it's the pre-show. This is our first 10 minutes. We're not actually getting started yet. Hi, chat room. Hey, everybody. That was attractive, wasn't it? You probably saw that up here. Did you just see me spraying the... I can't hide anymore. I used to be able to put this camera on and then you couldn't see me, scratch my nose. But now you can see me because I'm right there. I need to move that monitor so that it's over here or something so you can't see it. Actually, it'd be pretty good if I could get it up there. I don't think the arm that it's on would go that high. I think that's about as high as that arm's going to let it go. Because I think I wanted to have it up high. Oh, hey, everybody. Oh, I know, the power in Texas. You guys are dealing with sort of what we do all the time here in Florida with power outages, except when our power goes out, it's hurricane season, so it's hot outside. For you, it came through and it's cold outside. It's much worse. It's a much worse situation. But it's sort of, that's the way infrastructure works, isn't it? Wait till you get to the Network Plus exam and you just talk about redundancy and how there can never be enough. Like the only way there can be enough is to spend more money than makes sense, which is why, for example, Texas and Florida have not created all underground power. I don't know what they're trying to, I guess they're trying to make Texas a political issue. It's snow. It's a snow issue. It's not political. Snow has no political affiliation. So that's kind of how it works. That's politics. Take anything. If it's sunny outside, there's a political reason. If it's snowing, there's a political reason. It just doesn't make sense. But that's the business of politics. That's why I'm not in the business of politics. That's why I do technical stuff. The computers are great. You give them ones and zeros, and they give you ones and zeros back. And if you give them exactly the same ones and zeros, you get exactly the same ones and zeros back. It's so predictable. It's so deterministic. I love it. That's right down my alley. I don't want a lot of variability. I don't want the computer. Of course, I say that, and then I'm working on the Security Plus course right now, and there's a section on quantum computing, which just changes everything. Suddenly, there are no ones and zeros anymore. Everything is a one and a zero at the same time. It's crazy. And yet it works. Let's check our systems here. Cameras all look good. The laptop doesn't have a camera. Laptop, that's not going to work. Glad we do this. There we go. We got to plug it in. And let's see if the laptop comes up. It's that dark box right there. And there it is. Laptop, there it is. We've got, what did I have there? I had this. Okay, now we have all of the video inputs up. Audio is good. Streaming is apparently working today. We're going to find out. Hopefully the streaming sounds okay. Hi, chat room in Vancouver, in Texas. A lot of folks joining us from Texas. Thanks for being here. What else are you going to do, right? England is here. Welcome. South Africa, New York, Ohio. That's kind of how it works. Yeah, we don't really plan for freezing cold like that here in the South. We're just not ready for that. Are we, folks from Ruskin, Florida? There's Iowa, Alabama, another Iowa. Everybody's checking in from Iowa. It's the big Iowa live stream today. More Florida, welcome. So glad to see my fellow Floridians. Maryland is here. Baston's here. Ireland. Good to have you. Denver's here. The Philippines, 1 a.m. in the Philippines. I'm so sorry, Philippines. I wish we could do it at a better time. There's always replays, right? You could go to sleep and then watch the replay tomorrow. But there's no fun in that. The fun is actually participating. Look at all the cities and places go by. I can't even read them off fast enough. Boston and British Columbia and New York and Virginia and Maryland and Graham, Washington and Ireland, Chicago, South Carolina, North Florida, New York, Kenya, California again, New Jersey, Broward is here. Broward County. Used to live in Broward County. I used to live in Pembroke Pines. I used to live in in South Florida area. I'm trying to remember the avenue I was on. 172nd? Is that where Silver Lakes is? That's where I lived. Out in West Broward. New Mexico and California. Brooklyn. Boston again. Dublin, Ireland again. How is it? I need to get over to Dublin. I need to get over to Ireland. That's a place I've never been. I've been very close. Been in the UK. I've been in Scotland. I just haven't made the jump to go to Ireland. I don't know what's wrong with me. I was in the general vicinity, relatively speaking, I guess. I know it's a big place. But that's one of those things that would be great to visit here eventually. Is who letting you in? Is somebody keeping you out? What's going on? Chat room. We've got 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes to go. It is a little warm out, 70 degrees Fahrenheit here in the big city. We've got a high today of 77. How's that possible? I don't think that's possible. It's very rainy. We are currently in a tornado warning. No, tornado watch. Tornado warnings when there actually is one. We are not in that. We're in a tornado watch for the duration of this. But we're not getting such bad weather. I think it's not turning out to be as bad here as they thought it would be. So hopefully our study group will be just fine. Just great. Mike passed the 501 with an 839. Congratulations. That Security Plus is a tough one. Glad you got through it. The A+, the ones we'll do today, are all questions. I guess I should get those questions ready to go here. Those look pretty good. Hello, Canada. Good to have you there. You can't see it. I've got my Canadian socks on today. So I'm thinking about my Canadian family today. They are in Hamilton, and they are in British Columbia. They are in Edmonton. They are all over. Folks in Edmonton, what is the temperature? I have everything up on here. So in Edmonton, it's 9 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of you in Canada, -13. In Hamilton, -2 Celsius. And down to 3 Celsius in Vancouver. So see there, I spoke Canadian there just for a moment. Isn't that adorable? Americans think talking in metrics is speaking Canadian. We don't know. We're oblivious to all of that. We do our feet and our miles, and for some reason we're happy with that. One of the only 3 countries in the world still doing imperial measurements, but here we are. I guess we aren't, though. For us here, we're doing all metric stuff. When we talk about networks, we talk about meters. When we talk about anything relating to frequencies or all of those, it's one of those things. I need to find, this should not be here. This should not be here. It needs to be over here. There's a phone. I think we're about ready, everybody. Where's my headphones? Let's put the headphones up. Let's put Mickey up right there. You can sit there. All right. It's -13 Canadian. That's what it is. It's 70 freedom degrees here in Florida. Is that how it works? I have no idea. Just don't take away the French fries. We'll be fine. The metric system is easier and more accurate. That doesn't mean anything. All that means is now we have to count different. I think it would be fun, but we're not up for it, apparently. We will figure it out eventually. It's going to take a little bit more time to make that happen. Okay, let's see if we can get, there we go. Yes, I do have a study group. Thank you, iPad, for telling me that I have a study group coming up. Let's get a green light on our keynote. Do we have a green light? If I hit the right button, we do have a green light. Those are always good when that happens. I think we're ready to go. Let's do a study group, everybody. Let's see how this works out here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2021 Core 2 A+ Study Group. It's your 220-1002 A+ Study Group. I'm James Messer. I will be your host from ProfessorMesser.com through whatever this craziness is that we do every month on the study group. During this first hour, I will ask you questions that come directly from the Core 2 A+ Study Group content. You will find that in the exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines and you can call in and we can talk all about whatever it is you'd like to talk about. And, well, almost anything that you would like to talk about. But if you are here live, you can participate interactively on the internet with all of us by following these instructions. Pop open a new browser window and go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That will present on the screen a question for you. You'll be able to have a look at what that question is if you follow that instructions. You can also download a mobile app called the Socrative Student app. It's the name of it is Socrative. It's a service that we use to present these questions to you live and in real time. If you use that app, it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if you're able to get in there. If you are able to get in using that name, or you were visiting that page, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, there will be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it's a question from last month. It's to see if you can get in and answer the questions properly. The question asks, a Windows 10 workstation contains a share name ending in a $sign. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it publicly writable? Is it available only on the local device? Does it contain encrypted files? Is it administratively hidden? Or is it a shared printer? Those are your 5 options. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. We will come back to that question in just a moment. And of course, as always, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. It's as if we are in the exam room with no other help available. In fact, speaking of no other help, there's plenty of help that you can get online before you walk into that exam room. We've got plenty available. A daily pop quiz question, for example, on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. There's also daily pop quiz questions on Instagram. If you like your question with a pretty picture, go to ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. And of course, if you're following us on YouTube, you've noticed we put out, 50 videos in the last month. We're currently putting out our latest Security Plus videos. So there's constant videos that are going out there. So plenty to work from there. Don't forget that the A+ exam is 2 separate exams that you have to pass. Today, we're going to talk about all of the exam objectives from the 220-1002. This was an exam that was released on January the 15th of 2019. So long ago, wasn't it? Back in the old days. But if you do the math, these exams are usually around about 3.5 years. That puts the estimated retirement, it says July of 2022. That would be next year. This is not July of 2021, which is this year, as we sit here in February of 2021. 2022. So if you're currently studying the A+ materials, you're doing exactly what you should be doing as long as you're studying the ones that say 220-1001 and 220-1002, and you're just fine. Plenty of time to study. You're in exactly the right place. To pass the 220-1002, you need to earn a 700 on the exam on a scale from 100 to 900. So of those 800 points, I guess you need 600 points. I don't know how they do the math there. It's very complicated. There's addition, there's subtraction. I'm not having it. And of course, if you are studying from older materials, the 220-1002 contains 23% new topics from the 900 series. So don't study from old materials. Always get materials that are specifically made for the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. The 220-1002 exam covers topics that include operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So all of the the questions that you'll get today, all the topics here in this first hour, they all come from those 4 different areas. Don't forget that on my website at professormesser.com/1002success is my success bundle. I know that all my videos, of course, are all available to watch for free online, but if you want a downloadable version, or you would like audio versions, or you would like my course notes, or you would like my practice exams, or you would like my exclusive exam hacks ebook, which helps you with the exam process, and also get priority Q&A to this study group, you simply can visit professormesser.com/1002success and get my success bundle. All those things come with the success bundle. It's all in there. You can learn more about that on the Professor Messer website. There are also free questions that you can answer on the website at professormesser.com/take10. It's my 10-question practice test for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. Hundreds of questions are there. Have a look at those at professormesser.com/take10. The video replay of this study group is always available immediately afterwards on YouTube. Only takes a few minutes to process once we're done, and you can watch the whole thing from beginning to end. There's also an audio podcast version of this available. If you have a podcast listening program and you would just like these automatically downloaded into your podcast listening application, you can find that at professormesser.com/podcast. You can either listen on that page, or you can download the RSS feed from there, apply that to your podcasting program, and you'd be in pretty good shape to listen in on the latest. It usually takes me about a day. I try to get the podcast posted the same day. Most of the time that works out okay. If you come back tomorrow or so, you'll find there is a fully listed timestamp for this event. So my marketing manager, Lori, goes through and listens to this whole thing. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. Lori's listening in right now, watching the replay of the chat go by, and she can see everything that we're doing, and she's making a note of when all of these things happen. So you can always come back later and find exactly the thing that you are looking for by going to the YouTube video description. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which was: a Windows 10 workstation contains a share name ending in a $sign. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it publicly writable? Is it available only on the local device? Does it contain encrypted files? Is it administratively hidden, or is it a shared printer? 73% of you say that is administratively hidden is the right answer. That's exactly correct. 10% said it contains encrypted files. That's not what the $sign does. 6% say it's available only on the local device. Well, that'd be the worst share ever. You can't share it if it's only available on the local device. It'd be a non-share, I guess. The publicly writable, nope, the name of the share has nothing to do, or the types of information you put in the share name, characters, letters, numbers, have nothing to do with whether the share can be written to or not. And then a shared printer, 7%. The share name could be anything, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a printer. Whenever you put a $sign at the end, though, it does not list out the name of the share if somebody was to ask for a list of available shares. So they would see all the shares that were made publicly available on that machine. But if you put a $sign, it just hides it from that list. It does not restrict somebody from accessing that share once they know the name of the share, but it kind of keeps the list of names a little easier. So some of these servers have tens or more, hundreds of share names that go by. So to keep it as not so cluttered, I guess is a good way to put it, they can put a $sign in there, and then you won't see that share name pop up. It's very useful to have that there. If you've ever looked at this and done something like a net share, you can view the shares that are on your system. And if you do a net view of another machine, you can see what those shares are as well. Adding that $sign just simply hides them in there. Very useful to be able to have that there, especially if you want to make it a little bit easier for the people that are having to find the shares on that computer, which means that if you did answer, that answer is D, administratively hidden. 75% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's move on to some new questions on our study group. And some folks in the chat room have already been asking questions about performance-based questions. And this is an important thing in the exam, is that not all of your questions on the exam will be multiple choice like this one on the screen. That's a multiple choice question. Here's a question, and then there's multiple answers to choose from, and you just choose the one that makes sense. So you've at least got, in this particular case, a 20% chance of getting that one right, even if you guessed. But CompTIA doesn't give you all multiple choice questions on their exam. The first handful of questions you get on the exam will be performance-based questions. That's what they call them. What they really are, anything but multiple choice questions. So they could be questions that are matching. They could be having to put things in a particular order from highest to lowest, fastest to slowest. It could be that you've got to drag and drop things onto a picture. There might be pull down options that you have to choose from depending on the question. All of the topics, though, on these performance-based questions come directly from the exam objectives. So don't feel like this is outside the scope of what you may have studied. This is exactly the type of information you should be studying. It's just asking it in a different way. So I have for you, just as I do every month, I have a brand new performance-based question for you as our very first new question of the month. Let's start with this question, which is a Linux question. And it asks, match the Linux utility to the description. And as you can see here, I have 4 descriptions, but I have 7 utilities listed. So we're going to have some utilities left over at the end. We're not going to use all of them. It makes it a little bit harder than, maybe a little bit easier than fill in the blank, but a little harder than a simple matching because there will be things left over. Let's go through what the Linux utilities are. They are apt-get, sudo, vi, chmod, ps, passwd, and dd. Those are the 7 Linux utilities. And then we got 4 descriptions. The first is change the login credentials for a specific user. The second is create a disk image of a Linux partition. The third is view the process ID for an application. And the last is install a specific utility. Those are the 4 different descriptions. So again, we have apt-get, sudo, vi, chmod, ps, passwd, and dd. Those are your utilities. And the 4 descriptions are change the login credentials for a specific user, create a disk image of a Linux partition, view the process ID for an application, and install a specific utility. Those are the 4 descriptions. I want you to lock in your answers by going to professormesser.com/QA. If you already think they're in the right order and you can match them up, the only thing you need to put in is A1, B2, C3, D4, and you're done. That's not the answer, by the way. I didn't make it quite that easy. Maybe once we have an April 1st study group, maybe I'll do that. Probably won't. That's just a bad day to do a study group, so perhaps we won't do that. But everything else would apply here. Find the descriptions, match it with the Linux name. I think you'll be good. This is one where knowing the Linux utilities becomes very important. This is just a subset, by the way, of the Linux utilities that you will see on your exam. There are many more Linux utilities you need to know. If you're ever trying to figure out what you need to know for the exam, they are listed very plainly in the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you have not downloaded the objectives, go to professormesser.com/objectives, download those objectives. They're going to be really, really useful to have because you don't want to start studying just all of these different utilities. It's one of those situations where it can get a little bit crazy what all these amazing pages and pages and pages of utilities when in fact CompTIA has a very specific set that you need to know. So one of those will get you to what you need. And in the chat room, as you are correctly mentioning, some of these terms actually are pronounced differently depending on who you are, which is perfectly fine. I constantly talk about Linux daemons. When I talk about Linux, I will have many people send me messages saying, "Oh, you're saying it wrong. It's daemon," because of the way it's written. Except that is a term that actually is demon. It's actually pronounced demon. But in the industry, you call them either one. We don't care. Call it whatever you like. As long as we know what you're talking about, we're perfect. That's a perfectly reasonable way to pronounce daemon or demon. I see people do both. It doesn't matter. You can do either one. So same thing here. As long as you get close, That's the perfect one. You never know what you run into. Let's go through these 4 utilities and see if we can match together what these happen to be. Here we go with our first one, which is change the login credentials for a specific user. So somebody says, I need to reset my password. You would use PASSWD. That is the password utility to change passwords either of your password or somebody else's password. If you're the administrator, you can change someone else's password, and that is the utility that you would use to do that. Let's do the second one, which is create a disk image of a Linux partition. Obviously, this would be very useful for doing backups. You can create an entire image, and of course, you can restore that image later on if you need to, and that would be the DD program. Such an odd name to use, but that data conversion utility of DD is a multi-function utility, and boy, it really does come in handy to be able to make an image and restore that regardless of the operating system you're using. That's a useful tool. Third on our list is view the process ID for an application. This is very useful if you want to be able to change the priority of an application. If you want to terminate the application, that becomes useful too. But you need to use the PS utility, which is our process viewer, to be able to view that. This is one where if you are ever in a situation of managing a Linux server and an application has gone rogue, it's now got a problem, it won't terminate, it's just a bad app. Well, this is a way that you can now finally find that application and ultimately kill it if you need to. But you need the process ID to be able to do that. So PS is a useful one to do that. And lastly, install a specific utility. If you want to do that, one of the many ways to make that happen is apt-get. And I do realize there are other utilities. I run on a CentOS, so I use Yum. I don't use apt-get. So it depends on the version or type of Linux build that you are using. And there's other utilities as well to do this. But that is one that can be very handy too. Apt-get is, and even that name has changed through the years. You will, in different Linux distributions, you will find different names for this. It might just be apt to be able to do that. But in the list of utility names you need to know in the exam objectives, that's the one you need to know, apt-get, to be able to do that. So we had some left over, like sudo, like vi, like chmod. Those did not get matched to anything. So so let's match them. Well, let's figure out what they do. So a little bit of a bonus. So one that did not get a match is sudo. So being able to perform a function to do something as the supervisor, as the root on Linux is the sudo. So if you need to execute a command as that super user, sudo will let you do that. So very useful to have that functionality. Next on our list, VI. I realize that VI is a very controversial subject, is that some of you use different editors than VI. And if you do, I'm just telling you that you're wrong. VI is the correct editor. So I look forward to your emails. VI is an editing utility. The visual mode editor allows you to edit a file. And last on our list, chmod. Please don't send me emails. Chmod allows you to change the mode. It's really chmod. The mode of a file system object, which is just an archaic Linux way to say, change the read, the write, and the execute bits based on who you happen to be. So that will be one of those. So that is your 7 different utilities. Now we've gone through what they all do and what all of their function is. Doing some hands-on with Linux is going to help you on the 1002. So if you can pop open a VM, if you don't have a virtual machine application on your computer now, assuming you're not running Linux, then make sure you load up VirtualBox, VMware Player, or any other type of virtual machine. VirtualBox is free. I've used that one as well. And load up, install a version of Linux. Pop open a command prompt, run some of these commands. Can't hurt anything if it's something that you're creating in a VM. So that would be a great way to understand what some of these do at a more specific level, something that you can remember a little better. And then it wouldn't just be rote memorization. It would be you actually doing these things to be able to make that happen. So there is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that gives you a little insight into Linux and the things that you need to know. So hopefully that's helped you a little bit. Let's shift gears. Oh, for some of you that asked, this did go by, and this does come up from time to time, is that you may have gotten some of these right and some of these wrong. With a multiple choice question, it's usually an all or nothing situation. But with some of these performance-based questions, there could be the potential for partial credit. So does CompTIA give you partial credit on these questions, or do they not? Well, in a frequently asked questions file that is on the CompTIA website, they tell you very definitively that they may or may not give you partial credit. Thanks, CompTIA. That was very helpful. Thanks for putting that in your frequently asked questions file. They said it was a frequently asked question. I guess they didn't say they would be answering it. The answer is we might or we might not. So we never know. That's okay. We'll just go back to multiple choice-based questions and we'll be able to struggle through, like this multiple choice-based question, which asks, which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Would that be Services, Task Manager, Programs and Features, Device Manager, or Task Scheduler? Which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Is that under Services, Task Manager, Programs and Features, Device Manager, or Task Scheduler? If you think you know the answer, do not put the answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Are performance-based questions worth more points? We don't know. They don't tell you how many points questions are worth. We do believe that every question is worth a different number of points. That's all we know. They don't give you more information about that either. So that's one of those situations where you just have to do everything you can, and you'll be fine with that. Which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Is that Services, Task Manager, Programs and Features, Device Manager, or Task Scheduler? Those are your 5 options. Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to put all of those in there. All of those answers you think it is. The thing that I find when I start going through these questions is there are some that I think you can probably cross out immediately. So that might be one to know about. And that might help you. I know on my multiple choice, I give you 5 multiple choice answers. On the exam, most commonly, you get 4 multiple choice answers. But I make mine, I think, a little bit harder. So maybe that will help as you go through this and work through the different pieces of it. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again, which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Would that be Services, Task Manager, Programs and Features, Device Manager, or Task Scheduler? 65% of you say Task Manager. Pretty good number there. 20%, though, say Services is where you would find that. 9%, almost double digits, said Programs and Features, which has dropped to 8%. Now back to 9. Oh, it's very, very tense here. 6% say Task Scheduler, and 1% said Device Manager. It's really not tense at all, is it? Let's figure out what this might be. If you're ever trying to troubleshoot a problem with the startup applications in Windows and deal with the process, my system takes forever to boot. It may be that all of those applications are trying to start up when somebody logs in. So it's useful to know, are there a lot of applications starting when you log in? Are there no applications starting when you log in? Could this be part of the problem? And a great way to do that is to go to Task Manager. In Windows 10, Task Manager now has a list of the startup files. In fact, you can see there's a startup tab right there in Windows 10. That was not available in Windows 7, for example, Windows 8. This was moved over from the system configuration utility. And now you've got this task manager functionality. And from here, you can disable them, reboot the system, see if it's still slow. This can really help you try to figure out where the slowdowns may be occurring. You can disable everything and load them up one at a time. Maybe that would be another way to do it. So there's different strategies you could take. Some of it is just your opinion on what you think is going on. You may think that this isn't anything relating to your problem, so let's disable everything, reboot. Oh, it's still slow. Okay, it's not our startup apps. Or suddenly it works, and now you know it's got to be one of those in that list. And then that's why you make the big bucks. You go through one at a time, re-enabling, rebooting, re-enabling, rebooting, re-enabling, rebooting, until you find the problematic application. That's what you do. That's the troubleshooting process, and that's the one you should follow by going to Task Manager. Answer B is what you should do. Now, there are some other options here. For example, services. 19% of you said services would be what you would do. But services are not the user applications that load when you launch. This question was very specific to the user applications that launch during startup, whereas services are non-interactive, non-user input type applications. The users don't put anything into a service, generally speaking. The service is never seen on your screen. It all works in the background. It doesn't require any user intervention to be able to interact with that application. And so that would not qualify as a user application that launches during startup. In fact, the services launch when you are either logged in, or if it's a system service, it launches when Windows starts. So that would be a good close answer, but not quite there. That's not what you would use. So service is not the best way to manage user applications that launch during startup. 9% of you said programs and features, which is great if you need to install or uninstall a program, but it doesn't help you with the launch process, the startup process. You got 6% of you that said task scheduler. Task scheduler is when you need to put into a calendar a list of a date and time on when an application should run. Well, this is not about date and time. This is about during startup. So task scheduler would not be the right one to go with. And then device manager manages the hardware drivers that are in your system. So if you need to manage your mouse, your keyboard, your camera, your USB interfaces, that's a great place to go, device manager. But that doesn't help you with the startup apps. So the best place for startup apps, task manager. 67% of you were spot on. You got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice based question. Next on our list is a question that asks, a help desk technician needs to view and modify information on a Linux desktop. Which of these would be the best way to provide this functionality? Would it be RDP, Telnet, PowerShell, VNC, or SSH? A help desk technician needs to view and modify information on a Linux desktop. Which of these would be the best way to provide this functionality? Would it be RDP, Telnet, PowerShell, VNC, or SSH? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. See if you know what that answer happens to be. You have to read through these questions very carefully. It's sort of the same scenario you have on the actual exam, is that every part of this question means something to the answer. It's unusual on the exam that you would have a question that would put information in that doesn't have a direct relationship to the answer, because there's so little room on the exam for these questions, and they're not enormous questions on the A+ exam. It's not like the Security Plus exam where the questions are just paragraphs of information sometimes. These are relatively straightforward. So make sure you read through every aspect of what they're asking and find the best answer for what they're looking for. In fact, this is one that asks for the best way. So that's one you may want to step through and figure out the details. A number of you are putting in your answers now, waiting for a few more people to lock it in to have them there. I guess CompTIA's questions, folks are talking about the way the questions are worded on the exam. And on the exam, you don't get a lot of trivia questions. You don't get, CompTIA never asks you for the VNC, what does VNC stand for? They're never going to ask you a question like that. What does RDP stand for? You will never get a question like that on your exam. You will instead get a question like this one where there is a scenario. They are using VNC, so what does that mean? They're more interested in knowing, do you know how to use VNC or RDP or SSH or Telnet or PowerShell? They want you to know what those things are and how you would use them in a practical sense, which is a lot of people aren't ready for that. A lot of people are ready for trivia. How many pins on memory? They don't ask that question. You'll never get a question like that. So that's the key, is they want you to see it is a little harder because they want you to see if you know how to use these things. Let's see if you knew how to use these things. Question asked, a help desk technician needs to view and modify information on a Linux desktop. Which of these would be the best way to provide this functionality? RDP, Telnet, PowerShell, VNC, or SSH? And we are kind of torn, aren't we? We aren't really quite sure. SSH got 37% of the vote. So from a plurality perspective, we got that at number 1. Number 2 on our list, 29% said VNC, 19% said RDP, whatever that is, 11% said PowerShell, and then 3% said Telnet. So 37% of you said SSH to be able to view and modify information on a Linux desktop. But the reality is a Linux desktop looks something like this. This is the desktop of Linux, and just one of many different flavors of desktops on Linux. If you are doing something like SSH, which 38% of you chose, you wouldn't have access to this graphical display on this desktop. So that wouldn't work for you very well. You would use instead VNC, the virtual network computing, which uses a protocol called RFB, remote frame buffer, although that's not as important. You hardly even ever hear anybody talk about RFB. Everybody always talks about VNC like it is a protocol. It's usually a comparison. VNC is sort of the Linux version of RDP, which is the remote desktop protocol used in Windows. This is sort of the Linux flavor. VNC is also the same standard is used for Mac OS. If you turn on screen sharing on Mac OS, it uses VNC to be able to use that because it's sort of an open standard, if you will. It's not a standard, but it certainly is open. So it's one that has a very easy to use for that. There are other things you can use to view the desktop. You don't have to use VNC. Extremely useful to have that functionality, but VNC is just one thing you can do. You might want to use a third-party product like TeamViewer, like LogMeIn, and there's just tons of different options out there for those. Those are third-party commercial proprietary solutions. And what VNC, of course, does, and these commercial solutions, allow you to view the desktop, share the desktop, move the mouse around. Someone can see what you're doing. You can share files this way. You can print through many of these. Great functionality to have that. But it is one that you would have to use if you want to get to that graphical desktop and be able to use it. So VNC, answer D, 30% of you. That is actually the answer we were looking for. It would not be SSH, secure shell, although immediately when you think Linux, Mac OS, and being able to remotely access those devices, you immediately think SSH. But SSH is access of a terminal console. In fact, it's terminal console that you're starting up. You're not looking at someone else's terminal console, although you can do that, but that is not what SSH does by default. That is someone needing to configure and look at a Linux desktop would need more functionality, and that's what VNC provides. You have a similar functionality to VNC with RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, which 18% of you chose, but that's the Windows version. That's the Microsoft-specific protocol, Remote Desktop Protocol. And although there are many remote desktop clients on Linux, on Mac OS, on Windows, on iOS, on Android, and others, the service for remote desktop is one that runs on a Windows computer almost exclusively. Telnet is the non-secure flavor of a terminal front end. SSH is primarily or really exclusively what everyone should be using. Telnet would never be used in any practical sense on anyone's network for anything. So that's one of those cases where Know that you shouldn't use Telnet. If you see someone using Telnet, you need to find out why are you using Telnet. That's such a bad idea. And then PowerShell is a scripting front end for Windows. Has nothing to do with viewing or modifying information on a Linux desktop. Your answer again, D, VNC is what we were looking for. That is the virtual network computing front end for Linux, and 31% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. We're still not going to Windows yet, though. For some reason, I've got every other operating system question about this today. So we're going to do another operating system question that has nothing to do with Windows. This next question asks, where are CA certificates stored on a Mac OS system? Would those be in iCloud, Spotlight, Mission Control, Finder, or Keychain? Did I just make all of those up? Nope, all of those are real things. Where are CA certificates stored on a Mac OS system? Is it iCloud, Spotlight, Mission Control, Finder, or Keychain? See if you know what that is. The answers can be locked in by visiting professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See what you think it is. What does it happen to be? Be able to use that. One of the things that I always do when working with Mac OS is my primary desktop. Everything you're seeing on my screen right now is a Mac OS desktop. But if you are visiting other sites, if you go to the Professor Messer website, you're on Linux. If you're watching the stream right now, it's being sent to you using Windows. So I have many different operating systems running here. I don't care what the OS is. I just care what it does. So I use different operating systems for different things that work well for me. And you can, of course, do that. Now, of course, Linux doesn't work at all. So I just want to throw that out there. Maybe I'm just trying to infuriate someone to be able to get more views on YouTube. Maybe that's what I'm doing. I don't think I have to worry about any of that. I think we should focus on questions and answers. What are CA certificates, they ask in the chat room? Well, that's a good question. That is what you would want to know. And of course, it's useful if we don't actually give any hints in the chat room. You'll have to figure out, and we will figure out together, what CA certificates happen to be. In just a moment, we'll talk all about those and have that functionality. Yes, my contention's always been that Linux doesn't work. There's no way that operating system works. Now, of course, if you're on the Professor Messer website right now, it's all Linux all the time. It works fabulously. It's amazing. I'm being sarcastic in that. But there's different purposes and different operating systems for different things. So, yes, I look forward to those emails. Where are CA certificates stored on a Mac OS system? Is it in iCloud, in Spotlight, in Mission Control, in Finder, or in Keychain? What do you think? 66% of you say it's Keychain. 16% of you say it's Mission Control. 8% said iCloud. 7% say Finder. And 2% say Spotlight. It would not be iCloud? I thought everything was in the cloud. Isn't everything in the cloud? Well, not the CA certificates. The CA certificates are in your Keychain. Those are the ones you would want to have stored on your local machine. Keychain's very useful. It stores passwords. It stores login credentials. It stores certificates. And certificates are probably, there's a huge number of certificates you'll find in your Keychain. This is very similar to the list of certificates you have in Windows, the certificate list that you have in Linux. Every operating system, every browser has a list of these certificates because it's important. You need to have those there so that you can do things like confirm that a type of connection to a website is secure. A CA certificate is one for a certificate authority certificate. Now, certificate authority is we have waved our magic wand over a number of magical companies, and we have said, you magical company can be a certificate authority. We are going to trust that any certificate you sign is going to be legitimate just because you said so. That's literally our trust relationship for browser and certificate authority certificates is all we did was say, we have now decided to trust you. We're going to put you in charge of our trust. And we want you to give us your public key. We're going to keep your public key on our machine. And if we go to professormesser.com and you have signed Professor Messer's website certificate for encryption, we're going to check that certificate signature. We're going to make sure that our certificate authority certificate, it can validate that signature from the Professor Messer website. And as long as it validates, then we trust that that connection is going to be encrypted and secure. It's all about trust. So that's what it's really about, is having a list of everybody's signature structure so that if we go to any website that happens to be encrypted, it will check and make sure that certificate really is legitimate. Because I could, of course, make my own certificates. I don't need a certificate authority. I'm going to build my own certificates on my server, and I'm going to put it there. Except if your browser then went to my website where I made up my own certificate, it would be an encrypted communication, but there would be nobody to vouch for me. There would be nobody to sign it and say that this really is Professor Messer's website. This really is Professor Messer that put this certificate on his website. The only way we're able to do that is by getting a signature from a certificate authority and then trusting that certificate authority. That's what that is all about, to have those things there. So hopefully that's a scenario when you start going through these that you might go through too. Let's step through the other options though. You've got plenty of other options. The keychain is 67% of what people chose, and that is the right answer. You've got 16% of you said mission control. And mission control is a front end that allows you to quickly access the applications that are running on your Mac OS computer. It's an extremely useful utility. It can pop open. I can have multiple desktops. I can jump between desktops. I have some great screenshots and video of that on the video that is in 1.9 macOS features on the 221,002 playlist. That's where that answer comes from. We've got other utilities on here like iCloud. iCloud, of course, is Apple's cloud-based service that is used to store files, maintain backups, plenty of functionality with iCloud. If you have an iOS device or a macOS device, you should absolutely be backing up to iCloud. That's a fantastic way to keep things backed up. You've got 7% said Finder. Finder is the file manager or the Windows Explorer, if you will, for Mac OS. So CA certificates are not stored in Finder. They are stored in the keychain. You have 2% of you said Spotlight. Spotlight is the search functionality within Mac OS, where you can easily, it's sort of like the search feature that's in Windows 10 down at the bottom. Similar functionality in Mac OS can help you find information either in the file system or hidden in the files themselves that you want to hunt down very easily. Where did I put information about CA certificates? And it'll find everything on my machine that has something to do with CA certificates and tell me about it. In this case, though, our CA certificates are stored in the keychain. That's where you want to be. 67% of you chose the keychain. You are absolutely correct. No question there. Spot on with what you're doing. Well, I know we've talked a lot about Linux and Mac OS already, but there's, of course, many other things on the Core 2 exam that you need to know about. And one of the things that I have found almost exclusively, just extensively at the very least, is that it's really hard to find very good practice questions for this exam. You've already gone through all of my videos. You have studied up on some hands-on. You've loaded up Linux. You've worked at the command prompt. You've done some of these utilities. You become very comfortable with the topics. But how do you know if you're ready for the exam? Well, you take some sample tests. But a lot of the sample tests and questions you'll find on the internet are just horrible. Some of them are completely wrong. They're written badly. It's bad grammar. There's misspellings. It takes away from the study process itself. I realized very early on that we needed some high-quality Q&A, but we needed to present it in a way that would actually teach, that would actually, when you get a question wrong, teach you why you got the question wrong, and then tell you why the right question is right. Those would be my practice exams. I wrote some. So this is my practice exams book. There's both a digital version, which we're about to see, and a physical version. You can see it's a big book. It's a lot of pages, 380 pages for the Core 2. But it's both the practice exam in a physical edition and a digital edition are identical. Let me step you through what I mean by having high quality Q&A. So this is directly from the book. We're in the PDF right now. A8 asks, a user in the accounting department has received this error message, quote, the print spooler service is not running, end quote. The user contacts the help desk and opens a ticket for assistance. The help desk technician performs some testing and identifies the issue. Which of these would be the best next step? Would it be to reinstall all printer drivers, restart the spooler service, reboot the computer, or power cycle the printer? Now, I have a list of all of the answers, and we can go to the quick answer. We can just click on the PDF. It'll take us to page 33. The details for this particular answer, even though I think we're on page 15, we can jump to page 44 just by clicking page 44 there, and I'll go right to it. This is one that shows the question again with all of these. So you've got user in the accounting office receiving that information and doing something with it. But it tells you the answer B, restart the spooler service. So we've already gone through the process of doing this. Let's restart the service. And then I tell you why that's the right answer so that you can see that is the reason you would do this. Now, if I'm taking this test, I'm online and I answer that question, I'm not getting it right. I always get these wrong for some reason. So what I've done for every wrong answer, I've written down why every answer is the wrong answer. So one thing I would even recommend to you, if you already have these practice exams and you get a question right, I really recommend you go through and read through the wrong answers, because when you take your exam, the exam question may be on a topic associated with the information in the wrong answers. And by reading through the wrong answers, you actually might remember information that can help you on the actual exam. I also, at the very end of this, put a link, a QR code, and a direct link to the video associated with this. So you can simply click here and pop open a new window to get to that video page. Or with this QR code, you can just point your camera at it, which is useful if you've got the physical book, because you really can't do anything on the physical book to click, but you can point your camera at the QR code that's in the book, and it will open up the video that talks about the topic associated with the question. And then once you're done, you can simply click the back button in your browser, in your PDF viewer, or the back button. Almost every PDF viewer has a back button. And now we're back to where we started, and we can go to the next question in our list. That's my practice questions. So if this is something you think might help you, feel free to hit my website at professormesser.com/core2pe for the Core 2 practice exams, and you can get that. There is a little bit of a discount if you purchase the practice exams with the course notes at the same time. Those are the course notes. If you haven't seen my course notes, it's all the notes from every video of the entire course, so that you don't have to write anything down. Save you a ton of time by having the course notes. There are both physical and digital editions of those available on the website. Let's get back to some Q&A. I've got another question for you. Finally, not a Mac OS or a Linux question. This question asks, a network administrator would like to require authentication to an Active Directory database before a user can connect to the wireless network. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this requirement? Is it 802.1x, TKIP, AES, WPA2, or CCMP? A network administrator would like to require authentication to the Active Directory database before a user can connect to the wireless network. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this requirement? Is it 802.1x, TKIP, AES, WPA2, or CCMP? This is probably the most common way people connect to their wireless networks. So this might be a little bit easier than some of the others. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. You'll be able to get there, figure out those details. Remember, do not put answers in the chat room. Do not put hints in the chat room. We want to instead make a guess and figure it out yourselves. You'll know what it is. I know what these things are. This is one that you probably, if you work in an office, you probably already do this. You may have no idea what it's called, but this is probably how they've set up your wireless network. to have this here. This would not be something you run at home. Now, unless you have an Active Directory database at home, you always do that. I think maybe some of you might. I don't. I do not have an Active Directory database at home. I probably should at this point. It's getting that way. Although now I have fewer people living at home. I have kids that are, they're growing up. They're moving out. They don't want to be near me anymore. They want to go do their own stuff. So I have fewer authentication requirements than I've had in the past. I guess that's the good way to put it, right? That's the way it's set up in my home. So I just share what the wireless password is, and we go with that. We'll figure out the details. Let's see how you did with this question. Let's look at our answers. The question again, a network administrator would like to require authentication to the Active Directory database before a user can connect to the wireless network. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be 802.1x, TKIP, AES, WPA2, or CCMP? All of these things, by the way, are real things. The answer here, or the answers you gave, 46% of you say WPA2. 32% of you say 802.1x. So almost all of you chose those two. 12% said AES. 6% said TKIP. 4% said CCMP. This is absolutely an authentication question. Now we need to think about how to configure the authentication on our wireless access point. And on your wireless access point at home, you may even have a choice for being able to do this. This is where you want to give people or limit the access that people would have to your wireless network. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to have it wide open. You're a coffee shop. There's no encryption. You just want it wide open. Not really the best solution these days. WPA3 is going to fix all that. But an open system would be open, non-encrypted, but would allow everybody access to the wireless network. Probably not even something you should do these days. On most of our home networks, I would hope you are using WPA2. Specifically, the way I do it at my home is to do WPA2 PSK, pre-shared key. You might also see this written as WPA2 personal. It's the same thing. It's just a different name for what the manufacturers are putting there. So I tell everybody, here's the pre-shared key in my house, Ninja 1, or whatever it is. It's not Ninja 1, but it's password. My password is password. No one will think of that. That's what I would tell everybody in my home. If you want to connect to the wireless network, use the password Ninja 1. But if you are a company, you really can't do that. First, you don't want people just having the password everywhere and everybody using the same password. You want people to be able to authenticate with their username and password. And then they leave the company, we just turn off their account and immediately they would not have access to anything on the network. So that makes perfect sense. In that case, we would use what you will sometimes see written as WPA2 Enterprise, but what this really is WPA2 802.1x, capital X. WPA2 with 802.1x uses the WPA2 encryption, but it also requires authentication to an 802.1x service. So that would usually be somebody running a Radius server, an LDAP server, a TACAX server, something I can authenticate to like Microsoft Active Directory. That's probably one of the most common encryption or authentication methods is Active Directory. So Active Directory is a perfect way. Usually this is done via LDAP to Active Directory. That fits under those additional factors and authentication servers and everything else that you would set up there to be able to have it. 802.1x is absolutely the way they're doing it at your office. You know, that office you used to go to, that's what they were doing when you were there. Maybe you're not doing it now because you're at home. But those of you that's still in an office, you're using 802.1x, which is the answer A, 802.1x. Only 31% of us got that one right. Most of us saw wireless network and immediately shifted gears to WPA2. Oh, it's wireless, WPA2. I've taught you well. I've overtaught you the necessity of making sure that WPA2 is enabled. And although WPA2 should also be enabled, Before we even get to that point of sending information over an encrypted channel, let's first authenticate you with your Windows login, and we'll do that with the Active Directory connection in our 802.1x selection configuration setting on your access point. So a useful one to have there. We have other options here. Most of these are protocols used for wireless networks, things like TKIP, which you would see with WPA, which hopefully none of you are using either, WPA. You would have normally AES is the encryption that's being used in your WPA2, most specifically AES as part of CCNP. So that is the answer here, of course, was 802.1xa. 30% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then you'll want to listen carefully at these instructions. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you can ignore this part. But if you are watching this for continuing education unit credit, you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, if you could be nice enough to put that this is the Core 2 February 2021 A+ study group. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, 802.1x. We'll do that. I make this up as we go along, people. 802.1x is our super secret code word of the month. And then if in the rest of that message, if you would like to put anything else you would like me to read, you can put it in there. I do like to read through your messages. I do read through every single one that comes through. I'm the one that processes these, so it takes me about a week to get them back to you, but I will absolutely get that to you. So that may be something you can work through. So we work through all of those. The super secret code word of the month, 802.1x, from the Contact Us link, put your name, your email, and put that in the message, and I'll get back to you with exactly what that would be with 802.1x. 802.1x is not a wireless standard. It's an authentication standard. 802.11 is the wireless group. 802.1 is not the wireless group. So those are two different things. I know they're close, though. Like, did you forget to put a 1 in? No. And it's not 802.1x and then the X means a 1 or a 2 or a 3. No, that's an actual X. So 802.1x is the actual thing. X is not a variable. It's a uppercase X, which means it's a standalone standard from the IEEE. The lowercase ones, if you ever see it on the wireless networks, 802.11a, the B, C, D, N. There actually is C and D and E and F. Those are changes or updates to an existing standard that eventually get rolled into a new standard when it's finally updated. So the 802.11 A, B, G, N, A, C, those are lowercase. That's not confusing at all, is it? Thanks, IEEE. Thanks for making that very clear for all of us when we're trying to learn this content and you're making uppercase and lowercase and using it like that. But that's one of those weird trivia things. You don't have to know that for the exam, but just one of those weird trivia things as it's associated with. I know it's top of the hour, but let's get another question in before we get too far along here. The next question, finally, a pure Windows question, which asks, a Windows application has crashed, but the user did not make a note of the error message. That never happens. Which of these would provide additional information about the crash? Would it be Task Manager, Defender, Event Viewer, Boot Rec, or Device Manager? A Windows application has crashed, but the user did not make a note of the error message, even though you told them to when you gave them a piece of paper and a pen and you put it right next to the computer and you said to do a print screen. But they didn't. Which of these would provide additional information about the crash? Would that be Task Manager, Defender, Event Viewer, Boot Rec, or Device Manager? What would it be? What would it be? The real question is figuring out these details and breaking through all of the differences with this. Whenever I start going through and trying to figure out this, I tend to find the questions I can get rid of some. I can get rid of some of the answers that are there. So you may be able to do that too. See if you can calculate us, eliminate us some of it. And I think you'll be in pretty good shape. This is one Also, as some people are mentioning in the chat room, you'll use this all the time. This is an incredibly useful thing because the users don't know what to write down. The messages go by, they just see a box. They're sort of trained to click OK on every box they get, which is why they just visit every website, even though messages pop up and say, don't visit this website. What are you doing? Stop. Don't do this. Okay, click, 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 and they visit the website. So same thing. Messages pop up, error messages. It's not up to them to always be the troubleshooting person. You have to be the troubleshooting person. So you will be asked to effectively be an archaeologist. How do you go back in time and be able to find out what it was they saw? So that's one of those that does come in handy, is knowing these utilities and being able to work through them. You should not be upset that the user has not written down these things. It's not their job. That's your job. In fact, they're paying you some pretty good money to be able to do this for them. And in fact, the more you know about these utilities, all of these utilities, the better a technologist you're going to be to have that all there. So hopefully that can help you. I don't know if that helps you with the answer, but maybe it helps you with your psyche. Maybe it helps you with your day-to-day. Like what I always see technicians that are very angry at the users, and I don't know why, because you want the users to be in some way helpless. I don't mean it directly like that, but if you're in accounting, I want the accounting people to focus on doing accounting things. I want the marketing people to focus on doing marketing. I want the payroll people to focus on doing the payroll. I don't want to have them worry about how Windows works. They shouldn't have to know that. I'll take care of their Windows. You take care of my payroll. And I think that's a good match. I think that's a perfect match between those two. Let's see if we can get the answer here. Windows applications crashed, but the user did not make a note of the error message. Which of these would provide additional information about the crash? Would that be Task Manager, Defender, Event Viewer, Boot Rec, or Device Manager? 88% of you say Event Viewer, single digits for everything else. Is it Task Manager 4%, Defender 3%, Boot Rec 3%, Device Manager 2%? I have a feeling a few of you may have worked through application crashes before, either at work or on your own computer, because this works on either place. If you want to know what happened in the past, there is a wealth of information in Event Viewer. It is perhaps too much information. It's overwhelming, the amount of information in Event Viewer. But it's in there. And if you can become good at filtering, at finding information, at identifying and reading and understanding what Event Viewer is telling you, you'll become a very, very good troubleshooting technician, a very good expert in Windows troubleshooting, because it's in there. Now, as the chat room mentioned, another fantastic way to start your view into Event Viewer is to use Reliability Monitor, which was not on my list intentionally. I think we've talked about Reliability Monitor recently. And that's not one that I put on that list. But then again, this is kind of a normal thing for CompTIA. The thing that you might think is being the number one answer doesn't show up. But that wasn't the question. The question wasn't what's the number one choice. The question is, which of these 5 things would provide additional information about the crash? And so they expect you to know where all of these different things may fit in the troubleshooting process. I think I'd probably start with Reliability Monitor too. It's such a great front end to Event Viewer. It kind of summarizes in a very easy to read perspective, especially like this where an application isn't working. I should almost put Reliability Monitor first on this list, because I think it allows you to see what's going on. In fact, I have a picture of it. Here's Reliability Monitor there. There it is. So Reliability Monitor, it maps out over time the crashes. You can see when something has crashed, when it's informational, when it's all there. And then you can click on something, drill down, and there's a filter button. You can filter on it in Event Viewer. So it does the filtering for you. It's like cheating. So Reliability Monitor is probably a better answer, but that wasn't one of your choices. Event Viewer was the choice, and that is the right answer. 88% of you did get that one right. Task Manager will show you what's running right now on the machine, but won't tell you what happened in the past. Defender is a great tool to be able to stop malware before it gets on your system. Doesn't help you with application crashes. You have boot rec, which is a great startup utility to help fix problems with a boot partition or the booting process of Windows, but it doesn't help you with error messages that happen with an application sometime in the past. And lastly, Device Manager. We mentioned this one earlier, a great front end to be able to look at device drivers for the hardware of your computer, the mouse, the keyboard, the video, the storage, the USB drives, the USB interfaces, or anything plugged into those, but doesn't help you understand what an application did in the past. So that's not going to help you either. The right answer here, Event Viewer, is the right answer. It's the only answer that makes any sense from these. That's the one you should have chosen, and that is indeed the right answer. All the questions we went through today come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. These are incredibly detailed breakdowns of everything you need to know to pass the exam. So when somebody asks me, what do I really need to know to pass this exam? Well, I'm glad you asked. CompTIA made a very comprehensive list. It's in the exam objectives, and it's free. You can get your free copy by going to professormesser.com/objectives, click the link that's there, or just go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, and put in your information, download the objectives for the exam you'd like. It makes a great checklist, so it should be the first thing you read through, so you really have an understanding of what do I need to know in this exam, and it should be the last thing that you go through. It's a great checklist to see, did I miss anything? Is there something they might ask me about that I'm not ready for? Nope, it's all listed there. There should never be something asked of you that you have not seen already in that list of exam objectives. That's what you should have. Very, very useful to have. Incredibly valuable to have. It's what I use to make my videos. We do one of these study groups all the time. This is the one for this week or this month. I still have 2 more study groups this month. That's not even what we're doing this month. This is completely wrong. It's not even what the dates are when both of them are next week. So this is useless. So I'm glad I brought this up. Fortunately, there's a better view of what's happening because things change all the time. So this was done intentionally by me to show you that professormesser.com/calendar, or click the calendar link at the top of the website, is a much better way than seeing slides on my study group of knowing exactly when the next event is going to be. Next week on Tuesday the 23rd and Wednesday the 24th is when the next study groups are going to be. I mention this because these dates, they change all the time. Sometimes the times change, so this is a great place to go to see when the next events are going to be. In March, it's even weirder. There's Tuesday the 2nd and Thursday the 4th are the A+ study groups, and then most of the month goes by, and then on Thursday the 25th and Tuesday the 30th are the Network Plus and Security Plus study groups. There's also a Google Calendar in here, so if you can sync your calendar to Google Calendar, you can do that. You can add it to your Google Calendar, and then if I change it, I automatically go in here and change things around. You know immediately when that's going to be. So ignore this and pay attention to this, and you'll be just fine. Don't forget on my website, my course notes are there. It's a great place to go to get a list of all of the notes, all the important pieces of information for my videos. You can find those at professormesser.com/1000notes. Well, we've got plenty more Q&A, except now we turn this around where you ask me the questions, and then hopefully I have some type of answer for you. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. How awkward is that? Stick around for the after show and find out. We also don't forget about the Success Bundle at professormesser.com/1002success. And of course, you have free stuff on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I'll ask also if you enjoyed the hour, if you got something out of the questions, if this is something you think you'd like, please hit that like button on the video. It's one of those things that does go a long way for people who are creating and putting content on YouTube, not just mine, but if you're watching anybody's video on YouTube today and you really like that video, click that like for them. It will make one of these content providers smile just a little bit more when you have those extra likes that come in at the end of the day. So also YouTube looks at those and they go, okay, you must be all right then if people like it. It does make a difference, so thank you for that. And it's something you can do for free. Thanks for sticking around for this first hour. Stick around for the after show. We're going to do more in just a couple seconds. Thanks for being here, though, on the first half of the study group, and we'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Let me push a button on this side. We'll come back at you. Here we go. You can get physical books as well on that page that has the list of all of the things that are there for sale. Underneath the pricing chart, there's a button that you can click to move you between digital edition and physical edition. So when you buy the physical edition, by the way, you get the digital one for free. So while you're waiting in the mail for this to arrive, you can download the PDF right now, and you can get that. So while we're about ready to start the after show, we sort of have started the after show, but now I really need to call into the after show so that you can call in to the after show. This is all in the cloud, right? So I've got a cloud-based front end that I use to take your phone calls, and I have to start that up now, which is kind of the boring part of the show. So once I start that up, I have to call into it, and I will do that right now as I push these buttons, and Skype tells me,
"Thank you for calling."
Well, you're welcome for me doing that. I'm going to type in my super secret number into the thing, and it says,
"Enter your 6-digit PIN."
Well, I will do that right now by typing in my 6-digit PIN, and then the nice lady says,
"Welcome, Professor Messer."
Thanks, nice lady. That was nice of you. Now, what that means is that anybody else can call in as well. If you're in the continental United States, you can call in on the toll-free line 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. If you are outside of the continental U.S., you can still call in for free using Skype. Skype can call any of these toll-free numbers for free. No Skype minutes are required. You just have to put a +1 at the beginning. That's the country code, +1. +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in there as well. Do I have hardback books? I do not have hardback books. Everything is softback, primarily for cost. It's easier to ship. It's perfect bound. It's not the spiral bound. It's a perfect bound softback book. So it's not hardback though. Just not at that point. If I'm ready to be a New York Times bestseller, we'll discuss that. But I can assure you, we're nowhere close to that. So that kind of is a problem that takes care of itself. Don't even have to worry about hardback books to be able to do that. That would be the easy way. So if you're looking for hardback books, though, I just don't do those. So that's one of the. I think these are all done on demand, by the way. So every book that's ordered is really printed specifically for you. I don't have a stack of these sitting in the back. This is really the back of my studio. This is not a green screen for those of you that were asking the question earlier. This is real stuff back here. That's really my picture. That's my son's picture of a joystick from an Atari 2600. That's really my real thing back there with the stuff. So one of the things that you'll find though is that these are printed on demand. So I could print them on demand, and they do hardback. They have hardback options, but you are the only person I've ever asked for hardback, which means probably not going to do any hardback books for that. All it would do is increase the cost you would have to pay for shipping anyway, I'm afraid. So one of those situations. I like hardback books. I just this one doesn't quite fit the requirement for hardback right now. So one of those. Let's go to the phone lines. The 401 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's John. I'm calling from Virginia.
Hey, John.
I just wanted to call and thank you. I actually got my A+ last November.
Nice.
And your study groups and your videos, and I got your practice tests and your notes, and they were all really, really helpful.
Congratulations.
Thank you. One thing I did was I listened to the study groups at work so I could study, and it was really helpful for me. But
fantastic. I'm glad that worked out.
I actually I'm working now. I ended up getting a job. I'm a Dell contractor.
Nice.
So
okay.
I do SLA repairs, so they'll call me to people's houses or businesses or whatever.
I used to do that. I worked for a computer company in South Miami doing exactly the same thing in my car every day, swapping out a cable, fixing a printer, whatever it happens to be. It's something different every day, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. It kind of I'm learning a lot. and I'm starting to get to the point where I'm starting to get comfortable, and I'm just trying to figure out. And this is the reason I called. I'm trying to figure out what I should be like focusing on for like my next step. I got here and I'm like, all right, now what do I do now? I was also looking at the Network Plus and the Security Plus tests, and I studied a little bit for those, but I'm just a little bit like I got there and now I don't know what to do.
These are questions. That specific question is one that you will never answer in your entire career. Well, you'll sort of answer. You'll answer for the moment, but you should be asking this question throughout your entire career, because that's what's going to drive you to go to the next thing. When I was in Miami, it was the summer. I had to wear a tie. It's hot and sweaty, and I'm taking a laser printer and replacing it. So I'm dragging a laser printer into a facility, and then I'm dragging the old one out, or at that time, even monitors, back the CRT monitors we used to do. That type of thing is very motivating, that type of work, because you don't want to stay doing that for very long. You want to learn, of course, and you want to learn as much as you can about everything you're doing, but you're thinking, how can I leverage this for the next step in whatever I'm going to do? In my particular case, I just kept my eyes open, and I went and visited a lot of different companies in South Florida, and I happened to service and provide the same type of maintenance to an insurance company. And I really liked the people I worked with there. I liked the facility that was there. Just nice people and a nice company to work for. And I put in an application there eventually and moved from sort of field maintenance into sort of the same thing, but in a building, corporate help desk, if you will. We were the service desk for information technology for the insurance company. So that's what I look at, is what do I want to do next? And so it's a combination. One of the advantages you have is that you're in IT, which means you could do a million different things. If you want to go to databases, you can do that. You want to do more cloud computing, you can do that. You want to go into networking? Absolutely. Would you like to do some security? There's an option for that. So all you have to do is figure out, what do you want to do next? And then figure out what are employers in your area looking for, and then see if there is a connection there. See if there's a love connection there that you can figure out. You may think, well, I like what I'm doing. I'm working with hardware, but I really want to do this thing. You want to do software, or you want to do, for me, is networking. I saw my very first sniffer and thought, I need to know everything about what's going on over that wire. So for me, it was networking was the next step after I got into that insurance company. So you'll probably see something like that too. Maybe you really like working with Windows. Maybe you really like working with the Windows Server. Maybe you found that Active Directory has some interesting things. So there's an entire group of jobs associated with keeping Windows systems running. Or maybe you find that Linux is more interesting. So I've already mentioned like 7 different jobs that you could fit. I don't have an answer for you. All I have is, you now need to figure out what your strategy should be. You're going to be going to these different places and working with the laptops and fixing the computers and doing that. But I know that somewhere in there, something has piqued your interest. Follow that interest. Learn everything you can about whatever interests you, and it will drive you towards what that next job is going to be. And what you'll find is you'll start adding next job after that, then the next job after that. You start adding onto your skill set, you start adding onto your knowledge base, and suddenly you become a very valuable employee, because now you have skills across the board, all starting down here at admittedly grunt work, where you went from place to place and you were fixing hardware. But as it turns out, you were also dealing with a lot of customer service issues. We're talking to people personally, usually people that may know nothing about technology. You're in people's houses. That's weird. So there's a whole process of professionalism that comes from that you will be able to use in a future job. And you don't even think now, you're thinking, oh, I had to go to a lot of people's houses today and it was really weird and the dog almost bit me. But think of all the things you're able to learn from that. And you probably even have a pattern and a conversation you can have with people. These are the skills you really need, interestingly enough, to be successful in technology, are skills that have to do with how well you deal with people. Ironically enough, that's the truth. So use all of that. Put all that together, put it in a big pot, stir it around, check the job postings, and I think you're going to be doing just fine, John.
All right. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the call. That's a fun job to have, by the way, is being someone who goes from place to place and solving the problem. And I've said on the study group before, there's a number of interesting places I went to or I have gone in my career to fix the problems. I've been to jail, not been to jail. I went to jail to fix a computer problem. I fixed the machine that does all the DNA testing. I've been on the floor of a beer manufacturing plant. I have been inside nuclear power plants, car manufacturers. There's right on the floor of a car manufacturer. They make everybody wear a long coat because if you've got pants on, there's zippers and buttons, and if you touch up against a car, you would scratch it. So you have to wear a kind of a lab coat that goes down to your legs, so that if you push up against a car, it doesn't scratch it. Things like that. The jail story is a good one. We'll have to tell the jail story here eventually. It's one where I realized I never want to go to jail. That was at the end of that one. That was the thing that it taught me. Just stick with the technology. Let's just keep doing the computer stuff and we're going to be okay. Let's go to the 804 area code. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Oh, hey, it's Tevin. Wow, I can't believe I got through.
You did get through. Hey, Tevin, thanks for calling.
All right, so I'll try to run down real quick. It's kind of a two questions in one. Anyway, I'll get started. So I've been listening to you off and on for years. I've been trying to break into the IT world for several years. Went to a school called ECPI University, and going and stuff like that, and like JSarge, and taking classes, studying off and on for years. And I finally broke into the IT world. Like next week is my first week doing PC disposal. And I know it's not like a help desk job, and I know it's kind of like a couple ranks below than a help desk job. But I'm finally into the IT world after all these years.
Great.
But my question, yeah, I know, right? I'm excited but nervous at the same time. So part of the question is, do you know what should I expect? Like, I've been around PC disposal in my previous job years ago, but I never was shadowing them to see exactly how they do, what they do on a daily basis. And I got a brief description and some of my few actual experience, such as recently worked at T-Mobile to set up their computers, take down their computers for COVID and stuff like that. But that's a different thing compared to like PC disposal / refresh.
Yeah. First thing I would ask if I got that job is do I get to use a flamethrower? That would be awesome. It probably is not the case, but I would check into that first thing at the very least. Whenever you start working and getting those first line jobs, I was just having a conversation with one of my kids about this because they're in college. Some of them are out of college. They're looking for those jobs or trying to figure out what job they want to be in. And we also mentioned this on the study group a couple days ago. Just get that first job. In IT, it doesn't really matter exactly what the job is. It's probably going to be a help desk or a service desk or a remote technician or something grunty. Just something in the lower levels of what a technician would be doing. I had a business management degree from Florida State University, a very good business school. Granted, I didn't do great, but I got the diploma. I passed. My first job was getting in a car every day and driving the streets of South Florida. And as I mentioned, just being that remote service technician job. And it was grunty and physically demanding. And I did have to go to jail. In fact, I locked my keys in the car when I visited the police department one time to fix one of their computers. And if you ever need to get your keys out of a car, go stop by the detectives that deal with car break-ins, and they can get your keys out, no problem. Don't know if you knew that. But that's one of those jobs, though, that you're not completely happy with. You know you don't want to do this the rest of your life, but you are learning something. There's valuable skills to be learned, and perhaps even more important, at least at a professional level, you're meeting people that you are going to be working with in the future, or you're going to know throughout your entire career. You may not even realize that yet, but as soon as you get that first job, you should be adding everybody onto your LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be the way that you keep up with people for the rest of your career, because you have no idea where this is going to go. For me, it's a job that took me from South Florida to North Florida is where I live now. And the job itself took me around the world, and I met people everywhere. And you want to be able to keep up with these folks that are in the same boat as you, because these will be professional relationships where you're able to find out what's going on in the industry and find jobs. Sometimes they need a job. Sometimes people go to different places and you think, wow, I should go do something that they're doing. Oh, they went to work for a startup. Maybe you can find out if that's a good deal. You know, those are great things to have there. For your first job and getting in to get that grunt work kind of level job, I think it's phenomenal. I think that's the perfect place for getting some knowledge of the industry and what you're doing. Now, I don't have my particular skill set. I never worked with sort of the breakdown or the disposal section specifically of equipment. So I don't have any day-to-day stories for you that I can tell you about getting rid of equipment. I know the process. I understand the high level of what needs to be done. I've worked with other people who handled that part of the process, but I just wasn't the one responsible for it in my particular role. But at least we know it's not rocket science. It's something completely reasonable. They'll easily be able to teach you the ropes of what you need to know. You'll be able, of course, to, as you put these devices out to pasture and you get new ones up and running for deployment, that's probably going to be the natural progression for you. And I bet most of these are going to be Windows-based. And if you do get into deployment for Windows, that's another valuable skill set to have. So you should be able to bounce off of disposal, should roll into deployment. It probably rolls into some type of inventory management. These are the basic skills you need to kind of get running at any IT department anywhere in the world. So take advantage of that. As I mentioned, getting in the door is so valuable. Just get in the door. Are they going to pay you well? No. Is it going to be a difficult job? Yes. It's going to be awful. It's going to be horrible. Nobody's going to like it. Nobody wants to do that first job, but it gets you in the door. And once you get in the door, now you don't have to worry so much about explaining what degree you got or what your GPA was or that you didn't have any practical experience. Now you have a ton of practical experience, and you start using that as a way to go up and up throughout your career. It's these moves up the blocks, up those stairs. So just go to the next stair and then learn everything you can, then go to the next level and then go to the next level. The great part is just getting in the door. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. And yeah, this leads to the second part. So, I mean, I guess you kind of already said it, but so basically using this job, can it catapult me to the help desk position afterwards?
Certainly could. You know, this is one where you kind of have to keep your eyes open and your ears open and your interest. One of the things that worked for me is I was working at the help desk in the insurance company, and there were other groups, of course. I'm help desk, so I'm mostly dealing with desktop issues. Here's Windows isn't working properly. Fix this mouse or keyboard, get it working again. But occasionally there would be the network team would have to come in on the weekend to run some cables, or the desktop management team would have to go in on the weekend to set up a new training room. And every time they did that, I would always ask, oh, do you need an extra set of hands? Need an extra body to help lift these things or to move a cable or to help set up? And of course, they would always say, oh, yeah. Yeah, show up because we're setting up a whole room full of training desks so we could use as many hands as we want. So it helped me in a couple of places. I got to see what their job was like and the things they had to set up, which was different than what I was doing. But it also showed them that I was interested in what they were doing and hopefully gave them an impression that I was at least competent at taking out the equipment and putting it on a desk and plugging things in. I'm just watching what they're doing because you never know. You're not trained at these jobs. You get trained by doing the job. And you watch what other people do and you listen to what they tell you to do. And they'll plug this in, plug that in, hit the Ethernet connection, load up this app, and we've got a program that takes it from there. Okay, got it. And you sort of learn incrementally that way. And you're building those relationships internally within your company. Those people will be in your company when a new job opens up and they're looking to fill it. And they go, hey, what about that guy that was in the help desk? He would be good. Or that person goes to another company that needs to hire a bunch of people and they remember you. This is one of the most important elements of getting a job in IT. I, of course, in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience, I say you need some formal education, you need some industry certifications, you need some practical experience, and the fourth element is you know somebody. So getting that job and moving up is often as much, as they say, of who you know as what you know. There's a reason there's a saying for that because it's absolutely true. And it's not like you're using your familiarity with someone or your professional relationship with someone to leap over your skill set. It's that you now have a trust relationship you've built with somebody. They know you. They know you come on work on time. They know you work hard. It's more of, can we trust this person to do what we need to do instead of hiring somebody off the street who we have no idea if they're going to be here for 2 weeks or 2 years. So that's one of the things I think is important too, is that when you get in these jobs, don't forget to start your LinkedIn or keep your LinkedIn going, build it, get everybody going in it, and keep those relationships going. The people I met in my very first jobs, I still am on the LinkedIn now, years later, and we get to watch where everybody is going and what everybody is doing. So it's a valuable thing that you will use your entire career.
Okay. And then, just this will end it all. And so for my future position starting next week, I'm assuming it will help me study for my A+. Originally I was going to take it this spring, but some stuff happened and I'm going to push it back a little bit more. Do you think my hands-on experience with PCs on a daily basis will help me study for the A+?
Oh, there's no question. One of those, I always tell people, watch the videos, read a book, do the Q&A when you're about ready to go take that exam. But one of the key pieces to me, and one of the things that helps me learn the best, is doing the hands-on. We had some questions today that talked about using Event Viewer. It talked about the boot up process. These are things that unless you're in a situation where it's slow to boot and you've now had to sit down with the machine and figure it out, you may not even know where to start. But if you've already done it 10 times, somebody asking you a question of what do you check first is going to be simple to you. Where do you go to get the error message? Oh, it's an Event Viewer. I know how to get that. I've done the filtering on that one. It's very easy. That's what you would use to make that happen. I think getting as much hands-on is probably just as important as reading the books and watching the videos. It really, I don't know whether it changes my brain or fixes a particular synapse or whatever it does, it helps me remember those things so much better if I've actually done them on a keyboard myself. So it's absolutely going to help you as well. Absolutely, Tevin.
All right, thank you so much. This might be the last time for a while me hearing you live because, again, my job is changing. But thank you so much for your help.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck with that job.
Thank you.
That's one of those, by the way, that before we go to another call, that's the sort of normal process. Get in the door. It's one of the things I was stressing to one of my kids this week is you just want that first job. Just get the first job. Is it going to be where you want to work? It might not be. Is it going to be the job you want right out of the gate? It probably isn't. Mine certainly wasn't. But now that I look back on it, that was the perfect job to have. I was new in South Florida. It was a job where I had to drive around South Florida. I got to learn South Florida pretty quick. In a month, I was an expert on, do I take 95? Do we take 826 or the Dolphin for that? Which one should we take? Could take the Turnpike up, but usually this time of day, so you go through this and you figure it out. But looking back on that, the skills I learned with working with hardware, installing equipment, installing memory, upgrading systems, or doing, as it turns out, a warranty repair in jail, in the psych ward of Miami-Dade Jail. That's a skill. That's a life lesson you won't get anywhere else. Thanks, IT. Let's go to the 631 area code. Thank you for holding for so long, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, Professor Messer. My name is Philip, and I live in New York, but I'm from California originally.
Okay, thanks for calling.
So first I just want to say thank you. So I passed my Core 1 2 weeks ago, and now I'm studying for the Core 2. So
great.
Been using all of your notes, all of your materials, so thank you very much for that.
Thanks for watching.
So my question is, so I love the fusion of software and hardware, which is why I, decided to go with IT. And I know some other people who are also in the field, and they recommended, that, one person said security cloud engineer was a good landing spot for that, because I like to tinker and try and figure things out to make it work better. So one person said security cloud engineer, a cloud security engineer, and then someone else said penetration testing.
Okay.
But I wanted to get your perspective on what you thought would be a good option.
Well, both of those are pretty hot for the industry. I would say probably the cloud side is probably the hottest right now as far as jobs. Certainly cloud type positions, not necessarily security in the cloud, but sort of cloud in general, DevOps, cloud administration, anything relating to cloud technologies is pretty hot right now. The thing about penetration testing is certainly a security related field. It's sexy. It sounds like fun. It's what you see on the movies is the penetration testing, and they exploited a vulnerability and gained access to the system, which is interesting and fun and a great job to have. It's a very small number of jobs in IT relative to everything else. It's a very small number of jobs in IT security relative to all the security jobs. It's a very niche job. And it usually is a type of job where you need to have some extensive time and experience in the industry before you can be someone like a penetration tester, because you do need to have a very well-honed knowledge of operating systems, multiple types of operating systems, of networking, of applications, and it sort of blends together sort of a combination of many, many things that you've learned over a number of years. Not generally a job you start at in the industry. Hard to find an entry-level penetration testing job. It's also very hard to find an entry-level cloud job. Those are a challenge to find, but they're a little easier if you're getting into a security operations center, a network operations center, or you're focusing more on DevOps, which is a little bit of a combination of someone who understands cloud technologies and can script very well. I know it has the word dev in it, which sounds like developer, and they want it to sound like developer, but you're not a developer. You're somebody who is making sure that people have access to applications and data, but you're also automating the cloud side of it. It's somebody who's very good at automating the cloud. It should be like orchestrator ops. Orc ops? That doesn't work. So DevOps makes more sense, doesn't it? It just sounds better. Both of those are really good. What you may find if you're trying to get that entry-level job is you end up starting at that help desk for the people who are actually doing the DevOps or the security, cloud administration, or one of those other things it happens to be. The first job, if you're looking to go down that road, should probably be something like a security operations center or a SOC. If you're in a very large geography, a big city, like a top tier city, then there may be options for a security operations center job. Check your job postings in your area for jobs like that. Otherwise, you'll probably have to start at the normal help desk, or maybe even a network operations center would be a good place to sit. I think NOCs are sort of that good middle ground between merging the operating system with the cloud or with the security. And it's a good middle ground to figure out all of those pieces. So that's what I think is probably the best thing to focus on. I probably would not jump to trying to get a job being a penetration tester until you had more hours in the field for that, which you might. And if you do, then that makes perfect sense. But I think you'll find if you go look at job postings for someone who's doing penetration testing, it's a whole different tier of certifications, personal knowledge, and experience that you will need to really be successful in that job.
Oh, yeah. So I totally understand that. That's just what I'm looking at long term.
Great.
Because I know I want to be involved in security. And actually right now I work for a startup, a tech startup on the QC side of things. So, our device, does use Linux. So I manage some of our connectivity devices here. So I have, a small bit of networking experience, but, so, I'm hoping that, I can get, a networking job.
Yeah, you're probably doing tons of of automation and scripting, and especially with something where you're doing quality control.
Yeah, a little bit. It's more on the hardware side.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why I was saying I like the fusion of the hardware and the software. But yeah, so I just wanted to get your take on that, or if you had any other long-term ideas for things like that. But
from what you're saying and the place you want to go with this, the recommendation I would give to you, and you just mentioned it, is to get as much networking knowledge as you can of Ethernet networking, wide area networking, understanding routing, understanding switching. The Cisco CCNA level knowledge would be very, very valuable to build on. It is what every other part of IT is connected to. So whether you go into operating systems, databases, cloud computing, security, other networking, it all connects to the network. And there's a foundational knowledge of networking you need, especially if you go into IT security or cloud security. You will need extensive networking knowledge to be able to implement those types of technologies. I'm speaking as someone who was a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company, and I was in the specialization group that dealt with the cloud technologies that were our products, our cloud-based firewalls, API integration, orchestration of those things, trying to integrate them into the normal operations of cloud computing. Having a knowledge and a background of operating systems, of networking, and scripting was incredibly valuable. I wouldn't have been able to do that job without it.
Awesome. That is very valuable information. Thank you so much, Professor Messer.
Thanks, Philip. I appreciate the call. I think whenever I get into where I want to go in the industry, I think it's probably everybody has their own path. Everybody has their own idea of what they would like to do next. And I think that's one of the great things about IT is there is not a rail that you have to be on. This isn't like medicine or like law, where if you want to be a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. If you want to be a doctor, you have to pass the boards, whatever it happens to be. If you want to be a nurse, you got to pass those nursing boards. There is, of course, checks and balances. You have to have a certain set of knowledge in IT, but you might start off on the operating system side and then end up in networking and then end up in security. Or you might get a knock job to begin with and suddenly you're doing lots of networking to begin with. I started work kind of in the hardware fix-it side and sort of migrated into security from there with a couple of extra steps. Everybody has a different path. The goal is that you follow the path that makes sense for you. And there is a path for you that does make sense. Let's go back to the phone, 603 area code. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Mark. I currently live in Colorado.
Hey, Mark, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, I just wanted to say that, since I've been watching your videos, I've learned quite a bit. I was an automotive mechanic for about 10 years. But for the past 2 months, I've been studying your videos, and one of my childhood friends kind of got me into your videos, and been using Cisco Packet Tracer to try to, try to learn more networking. My question to you is, after I do get my networking certification, how do I kind of try to, stop people from trying to look at, all of my past history of working on cars and, try to just look at what I've been doing currently. And, I think a lot of my car experience travels into this business as well, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with newer cars, but they have a lot of control modules. They do use CAN bus systems. And, I think that helps me get a leg up on most of the other, maybe candidates that don't have that experience.
This is one of those situations that's not uncommon. It's interesting you bring that up about cars. As I'm updating the Security Plus certification I'm doing now, I grabbed a statistic that mentioned that in an average new car, we have about 65 CPUs in that device, along with the CAN bus networks and the other technologies that are connecting them all together. There's just a huge amount of technology stuck in our cars these days. The automobiles are remarkable, and we're doing amazing things with those. Whenever I get a lot of questions all the time from people that want to move from one type of, I'll call it a vertical market, but a type of job, and they want to move into IT. They could be nurses that want to move into IT. I've had lawyers that want to move into IT, truck drivers that want to do IT, someone who is a teacher wants to, they're from everywhere wanting to move and sort of shift gears into IT. And there's a couple of different approaches to this, but in my mind, almost all of them should have some way to rely back on what you do today. I took the example of a nurse that wanted to get into IT. And I told her, well, your hospital has an IT organization that is probably full of technologies and unique things specific to the medical environment. You imagine the imaging, the size of the networks, the amount of storage, the compliance issues they have to deal with, the ability to set up systems that can move around between the rooms, or set up computers that are in every single room, patient room. There's an opportunity to leverage what you know in that vertical market and be able to do something with that. The same thing applies for people who are in working with cars. If you are in the Detroit area, there's obviously a match. You can find any of the big manufacturers have enormous IT needs, but it also applies to organizations that may be even selling cars or selling services for cars. They're very large car, I won't say dealerships, but conglomerates of dealerships, usually how it works these days. It's kind of hard to find an independent car dealer these days. It's usually a conglomerate of hundreds of car dealerships spread across a geographical area. They have enormous IT requirements because every single one of those sites needs an increasing amount of IT. There's an opportunity to kind of use a little bit of the knowledge you have with the industry and apply it back to what you're doing. Now, I realize that's not always an option, and you may not even find your first job working in the same industry. You may not touch anything dealing with cars ever again. You may find yourself working with a financial company or with medical or with manufacturing. It may be something very different. which is fine too. You may be able to take advantage of personal relationships or business relationships that you've built through the years. If you have worked on people's cars that have a position with a company, whether it is IT or otherwise, they may be able to direct you to somebody in that department. And I mention this because it's something I mentioned earlier, is that we like to hire people we know or people that work at where we work, someone they know. So it actually moves you up in the list. So if you happen to have a relationship from a previous customer, from church, from a civic group that you're with, now's the time to start asking questions. Hey, I know you work at this place. Do you happen to know if your IT group has any positions open? I'm very interested in moving from what I'm doing now to moving into IT. People always want to help. So it is an opportunity to perhaps leverage that, especially in this type of situation where you're moving from one vertical market into a different one. It really helps if you can use every possible strategy. Sometimes it's not just about what you know. It's not just about what you've learned or what certificates you have, but bring in some of these people. It doesn't hurt to ask. And it's remarkable how many times simply asking the question opens up doors in other places that you had no idea the doors were even there.
Right. Well, thank you for that. I'll definitely keep that in mind. I just have a quick last question.
Sure.
I find myself, questioning myself. I'm on like number 70 of your Networking Plus videos, and I find myself asking, what's a good way of me kind of finding out the basic of ergonomics of how do you get to these certain points of, using command prompt. And, I understand that you could always ask a question and it will give you new answers in command prompt, but, like I said, learning the ergonomics of using Windows or Linux or stuff like that.
It probably is it's probably one of those situations where you need a lab of some kind. There needs to be some structure, or there's a problem and I need to be able to solve that problem. So there was a mention earlier of using Packet Tracer. It's a good example of that, where someone can present a file that has a structure of a network in Packet Tracer and it's not working, and they tell you figure out what's wrong with it. And there's a router, there's a switch, there's a workstation, and now you have to go through each one of those and figure out why is it not able to talk to each other. Those types of things I think are incredibly important in getting these skills down. Understanding there is a ping command and you can pop open a command line and you can use this ping command is great. But when would you use it? How would you use it?
Right.
What flags would you use to really optimize it? What situations would you run in? But you would kind of have to go through that problem process to even know. So for example, I was having a problem with my network here at home. It was a cable modem connection, and it would just every once in a while go away. The connection would just completely disappear, and then it would come back. And because I'm not constantly on the network, I would catch it when it would happen, but I was curious as to, is this happening at other times? So I started a ping running with a continuous ping option, and I would just watch the screen as it was going by. So every second it would ping, I would ping quad 9. So I'd ping 9.9.9.9, which is a DNS provider. And I'd ping quad 9, and it would just, every second, it would send a ping, it would get a response. And as soon as it disappeared, I could see in the ping, no response received, no response received, no response received. That was very valuable to me because I could just have that up on a window and I can make a note of when that was happening. And then I got to go back to my provider and say, it went out at this time. It went out at this time for this duration. It went out at this time for this duration. Here's what was in the logs of my local router, because I learned how to log into my local modem and pull up the statistics for the connection. And so working together by providing them this level of information, and they were able to look at the stats on their side, they eventually found where the problem was, and it was with hardware and a cable that was in my neighborhood that they would have not really been able to find easier had I not had that level of detail. So those are the things that you need to practice. You need to be able to get to a point where you have that problem, you fix the problem, and then suddenly you're smarter from having going through the process. On my website are a number of labs that you can get from a third party, but you can also find lots of great labs on the internet too, and you may be able to do it for free. You can download free versions of Windows to use in a lab from modern.ie. Microsoft has Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 7. You can download and try out and run in a VM so that you could play around at the command prompt but not break anything. Or if you do break it, you can fix it. Click a button, everything goes back. So get as much hands-on as you can. It becomes really useful.
It's pretty crazy that you just described that situation, because I'm actually trying to do that with myself here in my home network as well. So I think it's given me myself my own problem that I need to figure out. And unfortunately, my modem does not have port mirroring, so I can't, see the traffic on that end. But I've been just disconnecting devices one at a time and seeing what happens, I guess. But I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate the time that you had to answer my questions, and I think you'll be hearing more and more from me as I keep watching these study programs. But thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate you calling. Best of luck, Mark.
Thanks.
One of the things that kind of got me to the point of working with, once I was working through the ping, I realized I needed to tell the service provider what I was seeing at a more detailed level, because I would leave the room, and if I leave the room, I can't monitor the ping that was going on. And eventually found a program called Ping Plotter. I think this is a Mac OS program, but there's probably a Windows flavor of this as well, where you set up the ping to quad 9. Here's my quad 9 ping, and it effectively does a trace route along with the ping. So it's giving me the trace, the route that it takes to get from one place to the other. It gives me a graph of that route. You can see locally, boy, you can see when it really goes over the wide area network, can't you? Right there. It's a nice long delay between those two connections. And then it monitors down here what's going on with the average response time. And if there's packet loss, it makes it red. So I was able to take that information, and I think I even have a picture of it way down in my Instagram. You probably can't find it now because I have so many Instagram pictures that are up. But if I was to go through my I wonder if I could find it. If I go through everything in my profile, boy, wouldn't that be a mess? I'll just keep scrolling here to see if I can find it. But on there somewhere, way back in the archives of my Instagram, is a screenshot of that ping plotter when the network went out. Just so I could explain to the person at Comcast, here's exactly when it happened and what it was doing. Very valuable to have those skills. You can do it with the command line, but it's more like troubleshooting. Once you go through the troubleshooting process, you become better at resolving these the next time through. Becomes really useful. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to 516. Hello, caller. Which name were you calling from? Caller. Are you there? Are you unmuted, caller? Am I unmuted? Perhaps more importantly. Check. Are you there, caller? I'm going to put you back in the queue because you've been holding for so long. I would feel bad if something happened. So let's go to 302. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Mercer. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
First of all, I call to say thank you for the knowledge you shared through your channel on YouTube. I do follow sometimes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was calling because I did a help desk position back in early 2000.
Okay.
But I'm back into I'm doing a bachelor's into cybersecurity. But I was calling to see if you could reference me to some of the resources that I can start to have a hands-on because I'm kind of new to the field and I do not have any institution certification right now. but I'm looking forward to studying for the network security. And I've been following other posts. People are recommending that you do the A plus and then the network plus and then before security plus. Others are saying you can do either one. I've been contemplating on it and being new to the field. I was calling on the show to see if you could give me some pieces of advice in going forward.
I think the challenge with getting hands-on is you're not even sure where to start with some of this. It becomes a little bit more of a challenge. I've put on my site a list of resources that I like. And one of those resources includes a lab. If you go to the Professor Messer website, under each pull down for the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, whatever it happens to be, I have a list of study recommendations. And those study recommendations include, of course, they include my videos and they include course notes and that type of thing. But it also includes third-party books, many of which have great labs inside of them. I don't think many people even realize there's some great labs to be able to work with. But there's also a third party I work with that is called Practice Labs. And they have, of course, tons of labs across the board for different technologies. If you were to go out to Practice Labs, those are labs you would have to purchase. But I really like their labs. They're all virtual. All you need is a browser. You can't break anything on your computer, but it's running full-blown versions of Windows, of Linux. You've got routers and switches you can play around with depending on the labs you're doing. That's another great place to get some hands-on to help get you going. Another thing I mention to people, and this is one when you're trying to get a job, is to get some type of practical experience. So in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience, I give a list of a couple of labs that you could set up at home. For example, if you wanted to get into networking, I mentioned that you should set up a lab running pfSense, which is a open source firewall, maybe even set pfSense up with Snort, which is an IPS, so that you can have log information coming in and out for your internet connection. You can set up rules in a practical firewall, same type of rules you would set up in an enterprise firewall, by the way. You could track this over time. You can run reports. You can see traffic you had no idea was on your network because you can see that with pfSense. But probably most importantly, once you do all of that, not only do you know how to set up pfSense, you know how to run some aspects of it, you can configure it, you can set up all of those things that we just mentioned, but you also now have great stories because you're going to find information running across your network you had no idea was there. You're going to find your computers talking to computers over the internet that you did not expect for it to be talking to. You will find applications running you had no idea were running on your computer. That's the value of running things like pfSense. And then now you have a story. When you go into an interview and you're saying to somebody, I don't have any practical experience doing this, but I have set this up in my lab at home and you won't believe what I found. Let me tell you some stories. Then you're explaining to somebody else, here is some knowledge I've accumulated and some practical, I won't call it experience, but some practical knowledge you have of using the same type of technologies that they're already using on their network. That's the kind of people they want to hire. So these are the things that will put you into a different category from the other people who might be interviewing with that same job.
Okay. And thank you for that information. For the lab, using the pfSense firewall, I know I used pfSense in one of my classes lab. It's been a couple of semesters ago.
Great.
But do you have a hands-on lab on PSM, or can I get it from Practice Lab?
I don't think Practice Labs has one. I don't have one either. It would be nice to have that. There's got to be someone out there that has one to be able to have that there. Another good example, The folks in the chat were mentioning running Wireshark. I kind of cut my teeth in networking from a packet capturing program from the sniffer itself. It's an incredibly valuable way to learn networking. So both of those, I think, are good places to go. I wish I had something like that that I could point you to that was available Unfortunately, I'll just kind of have to point you over to YouTube and to the rest of the internet. Maybe there's a lab out there somebody else has used they can recommend.
Okay. Thank you. And then lastly, before, because I have to let other people come online, on the certification, since I'm kind of new into the cybersecurity field, I did some hands-on for A+, like I said, early 2000. But it's been quite some time. I wanted to practice those on my equipment at home. You know, I mess with my own computers and do some hands-on stuff that I did back in 2000.
Sure.
But when it comes to the certification, since I'm new, what would be your recommendation as to which certification to go with first? Because right now, since I don't have, I'm not working in the field right now. I've tried to put a couple of applications, but nothing has come through yet. So, what would be your recommendation when it comes to the certification? Like, I know a lot of times people would say, "Oh, it's based on the employer preference, what the employer is looking for." But like somebody who coming new into this field, which certification would you recommend that I go with first? Since I'm planning to do Security Plus, should I stick to that, or what? I mean, what's your recommendation?
It really, you're right. It really does depend on what employers are looking for. If you are someone who lives in the Washington, D.C. area, I would probably say you're probably going to be best getting a Security Plus. If you live in Texas, it might be a different story. It might be A+, or it might be Network Plus. Or if you live in L.A., employers may be looking for a completely different thing. They might be looking for Microsoft as an entry-level certification. I have no idea. Everything's different depending on where you go. So I really have to redirect you back to the employers. You should already have a spreadsheet that you should create of all of the jobs in your area that are kind of fit your requirements, that kind of fit your knowledge of where you think you qualify for that job. And you should find out what employers are looking for. Would they like you to have an A+? Would they like you to have Security Plus? Would they like you to have some of the Microsoft certifications? Do they want you to be Amazon certified? Do they want a formal degree? You know, what do they want? You should be able, after you collect 10 or 20 of those, there should be some that keep coming up time and time again. So if you're looking at that and 15 of the employers, there's A+ was mentioned in that job posting, okay, well, maybe I should get my A+ first. If you're in D.C., I'll bet 99% of them have Security Plus in there because of the requirements that the Department of Defense asks for. So it's going to be different in those situations. Find out what they want. Sometimes, especially when you want to get your foot in the door, it's not necessarily about you at that point. At that point, it's about what employers want. Get your foot in the door. Then you can start branching out into things that interest you. But the key is to make yourself as attractive and accessible and qualified to the employers as humanly possible.
Okay. And the last one, and then I'll take leave of you. Because I've been searching online, I'm in Texas. So do you know of any institution that I can, like, because I'm willing to learn since I'm new in the field. I'm willing to volunteer my time and service. Do you know of any institution that I can volunteer to do some of these practical, to have some of the practical experience?
There might be. I mentioned volunteerism in my video about getting a job in IT without any experience, because there are places that would like to have someone come in for a certain amount of time to take care of a task or to keep everything up and running. There might be a church that you go to that just needs somebody to make sure that antivirus and their machines are up to date with the latest patches. And you can do that once a week for a couple of hours and you're done. Or there may be a third party, maybe a nonprofit that needs somebody to help them understand how to use their computers better. It just depends on where you happen to be and what options are available. There's not a lot of great clearinghouses for this, by the way, because I tried to go find, is there a website that everybody could go to that talks about volunteering? And there are a few different ones, but it seems to be very geographical in how they are used. And it's certainly not anything comprehensive. Some folks on the chat room have been talking about maybe freelancing or going to Upwork or Fiverr or one of those. And that's certainly an option, but it also is, there's a lot of challenges with being able to do that successfully and reliably and to protect yourself. Because I would think if somebody's going to Upwork or Fiverr, they're really looking to pay somebody to solve a particular problem, and they're really hoping to find somebody who's already qualified to do that. I want somebody coming in, doing it, and we're done. That doesn't quite fit the scenario that we're looking for to be able to do that. But if you get good at that, and you now have kind of this set of jobs you do every week for third parties over Fiverr or Upwork or whatever freelance sites you like to go to, that's certainly something you can put in your resume. So although there's a little bit more difficult starting out, that does have some longevity there and certainly some practical experience for an employer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Marcel. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And by the way, I purchased your static question and the practice question for the Security Plus when I told them doing the certification.
I appreciate that more than you appreciate me. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. That's another thing that helps keep all this craziness going is your support of those course notes, the practice exams, the other materials in the success bundle. I hope that you are able to get as much information out of that and being able to use that to be successful as you can be. I hope it's a good win-win for both of us, and it helps us do more of these things. So even better. It means a lot that you help support what we're doing here. Let's go back to 516 and see if they were able to get back to the phone. Are you there, caller? Which name were you calling from? Caller. You've been holding for so long. There's no audio from your side, caller, at 516. That makes me sad. But maybe we'll be able to catch you next time. In the meantime, we will go to the 206 area code. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hello, Professor Messer. My name is Patrick, and I am from Seattle, Washington.
Hello, Patrick. I think we've spoken before. What can we do for you?
Yes, we have. So I'm getting a little bit closer to taking the test, and my only issue is right now is I've been kind of relaxing a little bit, and part of it's my fault. I mean, all of it, actually. And so
Mine too.
And so I'm almost done reading the 501. I know it has an expiration date. I checked it, and it is July 31st.
Correct.
And so I was so pressured by, completing it by March 6th because I saw it online. I was like, no, that cannot be the deadline. So question number 2 is I have another cousin that is in the military, and I have the credentials to help with the practice exam. My only issue is anxiety. I feel I know the material, and I hear the audios every single morning that I download from the Daryl Gibson's book. Mm-hmm. And so that actually keeps me motivated, but it's just a matter of me actually taking that initial footstep and actually completing that task of taking the test. And so, I mean, in your experience, I don't know how you are with testing, but I mean, what would you, it's kind of a trick question, what would you recommend as far as relaxing? And I know they're having a lot of people test at home because of COVID, so that actually may help out a little bit. Okay. But in fear of my Wi-Fi not being as strong, it could cause some issues. So, what do you recommend, since I'm almost done with the book? Do you recommend you go back to study the, 3 chapters at a time, then go back to the practice exams? And I guess that's it. I just trying to stay encouraged in these times right now. So what do you recommend?
Well, the first to give you some perspective on how I take tests is that the first 5 to 10 minutes when I'm in the test room, once we've started the exam, I have no idea what I'm reading. Just the anxiety, and I'm ramped up, and I'm trying to read a question, and I read it, and I forget completely what I just read. Like, okay, let's read again. read through the question, and I sort of understand what the question just said, and I read through the answers, and there's just so much excitement and nervousness and anxiety when I sit down and start the exam that it's really, really difficult for me to finally settle down, get all the adrenaline out of my system, and then finally I can start concentrating on what I'm seeing. So the first 5 to 10 minutes, I'm just wasted time for me. It's horrible. What I've learned to do is that prior to hitting the start button, they give you like 20 minutes to read through the candidate agreement. And it's the same way whether it's the Microsoft exam, the Cisco exam, the CompTIA exam. They all have something you have to sign at the beginning, which is effectively a non-disclosure agreement. But they give you like 20 minutes to read through it, and it's usually really long. So you know what I've started doing is I just read it. It is the most boring thing, but I read all the way through it. It takes some time to read it. I really want to understand what it's saying. There's a counter going, so I'm not missing anything. And it's not taking the time away from my testing because that's a different counter. So I go ahead and read through it. Allows me to kind of settle into the room, get a little more comfortable with it. And then finally, I can hit the, okay, I agree to that. Let's actually start the exam. And okay, I've got it. I'm now back in reality, and I can kind of focus more on the exam to do this. The other thing I'll tell you about these exams, as it turns out, if you fail the exam, nothing happens. The world doesn't end. I don't get fired. A safe doesn't fall on my head. Nobody died. I have to take the exam again. So it's not that so much is at stake that not passing the exam is the end of the world. So if you put things in perspective, that certainly helps. Now, would you like to be able to pass the exam the first time? Yeah, sure. Of course, I would too. That's not always worked out so well for me. Not everybody passes their exam the first time. I've taken some certification exams 3 times before I ever passed it. Oh, wow. So it just happens because these are new topics. Ostensibly, you're taking this certification exam because it's a new set of technologies for you. So, of course, this is going to be all brand new to you. It's going to be topics you've never had to deal with before. It's going to be a new set of questions you've never seen before. So it's almost expected. If you pass, it's kind of a surprise. Like, oh, I passed? Oh, that's good. I'm glad I don't have to pay. That's the biggest problem is you have to pay for it again. If there's anything that puts the pressure on, it's me having to take money out of my wallet. So yes, I get that part of it. If you are a student or if you are in classes, one thing that can help with that, it's kind of an odd turn of events there, is the CompTIA has an academic store so that if you're a student, you can get heavily discounted pricing for these certification exams. For example, the A+ exam, each one is $106 if you are a student. This would be an active student. You have to be able to prove to CompTIA that you are in class. They ask for documentation. It's not just giving an EDU email address. You actually have to show them you are a student. But if you're like me and you aren't a student, you have to pay full price. There's a little more nervousness involved there. Some people,
that's what I'm saying.
some people use other things. They use breathing exercises. They use CBD. They use something that will calm them down and get them in a good place, but still allow them to think and work with the computer. And as you mentioned, now that you can take the exam at home and you really study how the home system is set up and what the process is, then that might even be easier because you don't have to go anywhere. It's a comfortable environment. There's some certain rules you have to maintain. You can't cover your mouth or talk during the exam. But that at least you're now in an environment that's comfortable to you, and that might help as well for doing those types of things. That's, to me, everybody's got a different way of handling nervousness and anxiety. Find the way that works for you, leverage as much as you can from it, and then you'll be in good shape.
Awesome. And I just thank you for that. It's all within me as well. And I really get, sweaty palms thinking about it sometimes, but I know it'll work out for the best. And another thing real quickly, I was reading some of the comments on your YouTube, and someone said F for Patrick. I said, that is fabulous. You know what fail F means? It means first attempt in life. So I'll take any and all, anything. So, and it's okay. I take criticism well. And it doesn't bother me at all. So I was like, hey, thank you for you guys thinking about me. They tell me I'm an F. Thank you. Fabulous.
You can rely on nothing for the internet more than that. Just get a YouTube channel with a lot of people watching. I get some great ones coming in. So you've got exactly the right idea of how to handle these types of things, Patrick. Best of luck with this. You're going to do just fine. You will get through this, and it's all going to be a success. I promise you.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Messer. Take care. Stay safe. Stay indoors. Don't do anything.
Same to you, sir. Best of luck. All right. Yeah, F is that key. What is it? Call of Duty? Is that the one in the game that you're paying your respects? Have to pay your. That's what it is. It's paying respects, Patrick. It's not fail. That's what that is. Let's go back to the calls. At least in my mind, that's what they're saying to me when they send me those emails. The caller is the 323 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm Tony from LA.
Hello, Tony. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to thank you, Professor Messer, for all that you do and all the resources that you provide.
I appreciate that.
First.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. So I have a couple of questions. I'm currently been working at a help desk for 2.5 years.
Okay.
I want to move on to the next stage. Thinking about taking the Network Plus. Do I have to take the A Plus? Especially with a lot of these job listings saying that it's a plus, or can they overlook that with experience and possibly a Network Plus? And secondfold, is ageism a huge obstacle in kind of like the entry and intermediate levels of IT?
First, let's attack sort of the experience versus certifications. And I think most employers, at least the good ones who are working in the industry, recognize that if somebody's been on a help desk for 2 years, they got everything the A plus is going to give them. That's sort of a given. So I don't know if it's going to be required for someone with 2 years of help desk experience to then get an A plus, because you've kind of done the A plus stuff every day. You're kind of past that point. Now, there are some employers, especially those that have to prove to a third party that they're hiring people who are qualified, may require you to have an A plus so they can show someone else that they hire good people. Sometimes that happens, especially with Security Plus in the federal government and the Department of Defense. That's something you may run into. And if that's the case, you can always tell an employer, well, I can take the A plus and I feel comfortable we can pass that pretty easily. And I'll bet the employer would probably agree with you. So it's not always a requirement. Sometimes it's nice if you're trying to go out in the market and prove yourself to people, being able to say, yes, you worked on a help desk and you have the A plus. That's kind of a nice combo. Then there's no question. Then there's no worrying that you're going to have to convince somebody that what you've done qualifies you to have that level of experience. And if it's something where you can get the vouchers relatively inexpensively and you can get through the content, you really know it, and you can pass it relatively easy, it may be something easy to put on the resume. I say relatively easy to put on the resume so that you can move yourself up in the list of what people are looking for. Because as I mentioned in one of my videos on why your resume keeps getting rejected, I mentioned that the first step is this automated process where the computer looks at your resume and gives your resume a grade. It gives you a number of points based on the things that it finds on your resume. And of course, it presents all of that to a hiring manager. Eventually, a human sees these things, but they look at that score and they try to look at your resume. They try to evaluate it based on the score. And if you have an A plus, we can assume that that scoring process is going to score you a little better. So that's that's one of those situations where maybe having a resume as sort of, I won't say ridiculous, but sort of backwards to think of it as I've already been doing this for 2 years. Do I really need an A+? There might be some really good reasons why you'd want to get an A+, even though it doesn't really make sense to you, because that it just might fit into the whole looking for a job scenario. As far as ageism, I don't think ageism is something limited to a particular set of jobs, whether it's entry level, intermediate, or otherwise. I just think it exists in general across the industry. I've now been doing this a number of years full time. I don't know how well I would do if I was to go back into the industry and try to get another systems engineering job, which is what I left. I worked as a systems engineer for a manufacturing company, for a firewall company for 7 years. So could I go back and work for another security company? Would they hire me? Would I have to go get a facelift so that I looked younger? Should I have to be a little hipper? Should I have to change the way I dress? Those are valid concerns because people are human in how they react to people across the side of the other side of the table. It's something you have to always think about, and you always have to find the best people to work with. That's why when I mentioned in my video on how to get a job with no experience, I think the same thing applies if you do have experience, is try to work somewhere where you already know somebody is there. You already know someone who works in that company. It doesn't even have to be somebody who's in IT. You could know somebody who works in shipping and receiving. As long as they work in that company, you can say, well, I have a friend, he works here. I've known him forever. We go back years. I've known him since high school, known him since grade school. So there's some type of relationship with somebody who's already part of the company. That gets you past a lot of the hurdles and the things that might come up, like ageism or anything else that might come up during the interview process. That might be a good thing to consider as well, that going out alone is great, but you should also pull in every possible advantage you have and put all of this into one big pile. So it would be impossible for someone not to hire you because you already know someone there. You've got some practical experience. You have knowledge of the products they work with. You can start tomorrow. You're a hard worker, all those things. Make it so that they couldn't possibly say no, regardless of what age you happen to be. It's probably something we're just going to have to deal with in our industry for the duration. And it's something you always have to keep in mind as you go through your career, especially later on in your career. And maybe not something you have to worry about today. Maybe that's something you're worrying about later.
Well, thank you for your realistic answers. One last question. I've been at help desk for a couple of years. Is it possible to move on to another position in the industry? Like, what would the natural progression be? Because help desk is, as you know, grading. Do I have to stay on here, or is there actual possible routes?
Oh, no. In fact, I would say in most cases, the help desk is what we get you into to kind of to sharpen your tools, to kind of get you knowledgeable in the things you need to know in the industry. And in most cases, we're hoping people go out of the help desk and do something else. This is the place where we can make sure that they're good employees. They now understand kind of the people and the processes in our company. They understand the software that we use that's unique to what we do in the company. Now let's get you managing the workstations. Let's get you working with the server team. Let's get you as part of the networking team. Let's move you out of the help desk and get you doing something that's more important in this company, because now you have the skills to do that. Very rarely would I run into somebody who's just there. Oh, I want this help desk job. I'm going to stay in this help desk job. This is what I'm going to do. The only time that I sort of see that is when somebody is kind of been in a more higher level support role, maybe a tier 3 or tier 4, kind of high up the levels. And then maybe they move into help desk management. There's some great help desk manager is a phenomenal thing. And that's, of course, a place to move up. But if you have an interest in desktops, networking, security, databases, data centers, whatever it happens to be, you've probably got a great foundation to build on. Now's the time to start reaching out to those groups. If you know somebody in the desktop management group, because you probably work with them every day as part of the help desk, go ask them. Like, I'm looking to jump out of this help desk. Keep your ear to the ground. If you see any openings in your area, I'd really love to work with you guys. If there's something that you're hiring for in the future, let me know, and I'd love to put my resume in if that's a great idea. That's a 30-second conversation in the elevator, in you're at the snack machine on Zoom or whatever it is. Find out where they are, drop an email to them, catch them in the hallway, let them know you have some interest, and it's remarkable how things go after that. I mentioned this also 2 days ago, and I'll mention it again because it does apply. We often find in the industry, we tend to stay in our jobs for about 3 years, and then we go to the next job. That's kind of I would say the average in IT is you're working in a job 3 years, and then you go to another one. It seems to be more often than not, if you want to move up or have a job with more responsibility and a job with more pay, often we tend to move to a completely different company after that 3 years. It seems to be rare that you could make a significant upward move, a competitive upward move within a company you happen to be with. It does happen, and it's happened to me, but it seems there are more opportunities if you go outside of your company to a completely different organization. The problem of that, of course, is that there's stress involved with moving to another company. It's a new environment. It's changing jobs and moving. Those are like the two most stressful things you can have in your life. But in IT, we tend to get used to it. Of course, in 3 years, I'm going to move to another company. That's exactly what I'm going to do because I've looked here, not going to happen here. Management they don't give you a 20% increase in pay when you move up. They give you a 10% because you already work here. I don't know why companies do that, but they do. They sort of sacrifice sometimes their current work base. So there's your opportunity is get used and get ready to move somewhere else. Be ready to do it. Embrace it. Encourage yourself to do it. Not only will you have more options available to you, but you're probably going to end up making more money when you're done with that. And you're going to be there 3 years anyway. So get there 3 years, add to your LinkedIn, learn as much as you can, be a sponge, get your hands on as much new technology as possible, and then go to the next thing on your list. It's the circle of life in IT, it seems.
I guess that's what I was going to ask. So with an intention to leave the company, it just depends on what my intentions are as to what sort of roles are next, like junior network admin or something like that.
Well, that part's up to you. You get to decide what you want to do next. If you really like networking, you should find out what all the other networking jobs in your area happen to be, the ones you qualify for, see if there's some things they're looking for that aren't on your list of qualifications yet. Oh, is everybody asking for a CCNA? I guess I better get a CCNA before putting my name in for that job. Well, that'll give you something to do for the next 6 months. And you'll be learning something new, and it's exciting. And then you can put in your job posting, your resume with that particular job posting for that company. Or maybe you may find that you're qualified right now to go be that desktop administrator and go work for a company that needs somebody that can automate, deploy, and manage desktops in their organization with Active Directory. You may have those skills already. So that's what you should focus on is what you want to do. IT is a place where you can do anything. IT has the flexibility. If you want to do networking, security, databases, whatever it is, there are jobs out there that you can do. It's one of the most unique industries for job flexibility that I've ever seen, that probably even exists anywhere. So other than the military, this is one where you can really do anything. So that's where I would tell you to focus your efforts. Figure out what you like to do. Do you like servers? Go learn about Linux. Do you like Windows? Go learn about Windows. Is the cloud fascinating to you? Go get one of those Azure certifications. Go get that AWS Amazon certification. There's options available everywhere. Find out what employers would like. Find out what the highest paying employer wants. Go get what they want, and then go get that job where they pay you a lot of money. That's how it works, and it's really not much more difficult than that.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Appreciate the call. Best of luck. That's one of the things I think in IT that we don't sometimes take advantage of, or perhaps we do. You know, I've talked with a lot of people that have been working in particular jobs in IT for 10 years. They've been in the same job. And I've asked them, you know, are you just going to stay here you've been here 10 years. I've been coming in and talking to you for 10 years. I can't believe it. I'm surprised you've been in this job for 10 years. And they would say, well, yes, but I work here doing this job because I have a situation where I need the flexibility with time for things that I'm doing at home. And they give me the flexibility that nobody else will. Like, well, that's perfect. Of course you're going to stay in that job. Makes perfect sense. They pay you well. They give you the flexibility. There's that one thing you need that nobody else will do. And the place you're working now is awesome enough to give you that flexibility. That's a great reason to stay. And like I said, the last job I was at for 7 years. That certainly wasn't the 3-year plan. But there were advantages for me staying that long. And I was learning. There were not only the knowledge that I was learning, there were financial reasons for staying. There were people that I met that I liked to work with. I enjoyed the job that I was doing. So, of course, I'm going to stay there longer. It's not always 3 years, what I'm saying. And it shouldn't be that arbitrary. You should make decisions for your career and your family about why you're doing what you're doing. There needs to be a strategy. It's not like, oh, wait, my phone just beeped and said it's been 3 years. I have to leave now. It doesn't work like that. There should be a strategy. In fact, every day there should be a strategy. What do you want to do today? What do you want to do this month? What do you want to do for the next year? What do you want to do 3 years from now? You know, think about what that's going to be. Are you going to do those things? You might not. But if you never think about where you want to be, you will never be there. You have to set up that strategy. You have to have in your mind what you want to do next, or it's not going to happen. Back to the phone calls, the 513 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
From Cincinnati, Ohio.
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, I just want to know if you use coding for IT a lot.
When you say coding, what specifically do you mean by coding? Because that's a very broad term. So for your perspective of coding, what are you thinking?
Like numbers?
I think if I look at the industry, and I mentioned this, in fact, let me pull up the video I have on this. I have that video I did on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I think it was important in that video, probably more than any of the other videos I have, to talk about why IT and what IT is and how it applies to everything else. So bear with me a moment. I'm pulling this up on my screen here. There it is. How to get a job in IT with no experience. I'm going to bring up this first slide that I have in here, and it compares information technology and computer science. There it is. Now, under information technology, I qualify this as anything that supports, maintains, gives access to data, or allows people to use applications. That's information technology. Computer science is the side that builds hardware and builds applications. The programmers, the hardware developers, that's computer science. So that's my definition. That's a very broad definition. I realize that falls apart at some level, but we're going to talk very broadly here. And in the Venn diagram of those two things, information technology, people managing servers, routers, security systems, databases, email, and computer science, people writing applications, doing programming, building hardware and firmware. There's a little sliver in the middle where those two meet. There's not a lot. In fact, I kind of almost wanted to pull it apart a little further, just so there was even, but I had to have something on the screen to at least show you. That's my comparison of information technology and computer science. And I put that on the screen just so you can sort of follow along when I say there are people that would like to be programmers. They would like to be developers. They would like to build an application. They would like to work with C++. They would like to build an application that's a mobile app for a phone. They want to build an application that runs in a web browser. Those are application developers on the computer science side. We don't tend to have much use for those skills in IT because being able to be a good programmer, being able to build a mobile app, being able to build an app for a browser is a lifetime of skills. It's a constantly honing skill set that it's a science unto itself, literally a computer science unto itself. There's so much time and effort and knowledge you have to be able to do that on the other side, you would have no time to learn how to be an IT person. You would have no idea how to set up a firewall, how to manage an operating system, how to configure Linux, how to do any of those things. It becomes incredibly difficult to be able to know exactly what to do with that. So that's why I tell people, pick one of those. Pick either you're going to be a programmer to build applications, or you're going to be in the IT side. Now, on the IT side, we often tell people you need to know how to code, but that's sort of a broad term as well. It's not very specific. In IT, you need to know how to automate. I think that's a better way to put it. You need to know how to script. That is what we do in IT. Is it technically programming? I guess technically it is. But if I put it into a separate category, I think it gives a different the proper context to it. So anything that is orchestration, automation, and scripting, that is what we were looking to do. That is what we want to be able to work through and deal with is that's the information technology side. So if you do want to become competent in PowerShell, in shell scripting on Linux, in Python, there's your number one automation tool in IT today, it seems, especially because it integrates so well into the cloud-based things. Python, let's just pick two of those, PowerShell and Python. Pick those two. That's what you should learn. If you're really into coding, automation, IT, and making everything run better, those are the two things. I saw an article today that was talking about automation in IT, and it was saying that that companies have now realized that automation is their number one goal for 2021 and 2022. And I read this like, what are you talking about? It's been what we've been doing in information technology forever. Before there was Windows, I was automating. We were always trying to find ways to automate and do things automatically so we wouldn't have to do it ourselves. That's just human nature. That's not anything new. It's not anything that has anything to do with anything. That's one of those situations where you really do want to spend time learning Python and learning PowerShell because those are skills you'll be able to use on the first day of your job, just immediately. Yeah, that same article then went into machine learning and a bunch of other things. It quickly took a shift into the computer science side. But for what we need to do today, go learn some PowerShell. Go learn some Python. You do either one of those or both, you're in good shape as far as automation and those types of things. So I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that. That's probably one of those frequently asked questions in being able to do that. Well, we've come to the end, I would say, of another hour, but another hour and 42 minutes of Q&A where you've been able to call in and talk to me. So I appreciate that. Thanks for sticking around and having conversations with me about these topics. It's always something interesting. I think it's always something we can kind of build on as we go through this. And as you go through knowing what you're doing, your plans, maybe now you have some ideas and some other options in your mind you can keep working towards. It's a never-ending process. You're always going to be striving to do something different. You're always going to be learning something new. You will never know everything in IT. But that's the fun of it. We wouldn't do this if, we came to work every day and it was exactly the same thing. Nobody wants that. You want something that's always going to be changing, always going to be something new to learn. There will be new technologies next year that we don't have this year. We will all be learning those new technologies. Thanks for being here this week for our A+ study groups. Come back next week. I'll make sure I tell you the right days since I apparently didn't have the right piece up. Let's go to professormesser.com/calendar and let's inform you by doing that our next study group is on Tuesday the 23rd. It's our Network Plus study group, and Wednesday the 24th, back to back. We don't often have those. So back to back, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, we're doing Network Plus, Security Plus. You're going to be sick of me. By the time next week is over, you will be tired of this. You think that's worse. The week after, we're back at it. We're back in March on the 2nd and the 4th. There's always something going on here. And we'd love to have you come back too. I'll have more Q&A. All the Q&A is brand new every time. So there's always something different to go through. And if you're watching this and you're wondering when is the next event going to be, just go to professormesser.com/calendar. You'll be able to find out when our next live event is going to be. We'd love you to come join us for that one too. Plenty of questions you can answer online, and we'll do another one of these after shows where you can send me messages, put in the chat room, or give me a phone call. Thanks for being here this time. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.